Chapter 2566. Qin Zhao could get Zhang Ting to start a studio. A studio didn't need much management. Everyone could just focus on cleaning. However, it was different for a company. "Boss, can I find someone I know?" Zhang Ting asked. "Sure, but I'll send someone to the finance department myself," Qin Zhao said. It wasn't a matter of trust. Any company had to be supervised. Without supervision, unspeakable things would grow. It was unavoidable. Just then, a group of people walked out of the airport. A group of bodyguards in black surrounded a man from Central Asia. "Qin Zhao." It was Bifla. "How did you know my flight would arrive at this time?" "I don't know," Qin Zhao said casually. "I'm here to send my friends off." "Boss, you have guests. We'll go into the departure lounge first." "Okay, I won't send you guys in. Director Zhang, that Central Asian guy, looks very powerful. He has 20 bodyguards alone." "Of course," Zhang Ting whispered. "He's the richest man in Central Asia, Gunbai Bifla." "Our big boss knows someone like that? I thought he was just a nouveau riche." "What are you thinking? Our boss is smarter than anyone. Do you really think he's a nouveau riche?" "Smarter? Really? I just think he's dumb. He's a university professor. His knowledge can only be higher than yours." Zhang Ting rolled her eyes at her assistant, Xiao Qi. "You think he's dumb because he doesn't want to argue with you?" Zhang Ting didn't know what business Qin Zhao did. But after interacting with Qin Zhao for a few days, Qin Zhao often didn't hide his calls from her. Once, she heard Qin Zhao say that he would chase them out of the California market and inform all the supermarkets. If anyone put their products on the shelves, he would cut off their supply. Zhang Ting knew that Qin Zhao's business was definitely not small. No ordinary manufacturer would dare to run out of stock in a supermarket. Because supermarkets were the upstream of manufacturers, they were usually in a strong position. Many times, if a manufacturer offended a supermarket, then it wouldn't be the manufacturer cutting off their supply. Instead, the supermarket wouldn't even give them a chance to put their products on the shelves. This was because almost every product had products of the same type and quality. Supermarkets didn't care if they had one more or one less product. Yet, Qin Zhao could say something like that with such confidence. In that case, Qin Zhao's products definitely had a strong consumer base. And he even knew a big shot like Gunbai Bifla. Looking at their interaction, it was not something an ordinary business partner could compare to. Without a certain background, people might not even bother with you. If Qin Zhao wasn't married, he would already have a child. Zhang Ting couldn't help but say that Qin Zhao was tempted. Although she came from a good family background, she couldn't compare to Qin Zhao in terms of family background. In the past few days, Qin Zhao had probably spent more than what she had worked hard for in the past few years. There was also the wealth that Qin Zhao had displayed in the past few days. That super cruise ship was estimated to cost more than $100 million. Also, he came to the hotel in a different car every day. Just the Porsche 918 alone had already gathered 4 colors. "Qin Zhao, you said you found a way to break through?" "It's hard to say. I just found some ancient books and studied them. Combined with my own situation, I came up with a solution." Qin Zhao didn't hide it. He directly took out the content of his modified cultivation method. Bifla took it. It was arranged with the cultivation method of the small world, Qin Zhao's experience and thoughts, as well as the research process. Bifla read carefully. His expression changed. He couldn't tell if it was good or bad. "How is it?" "I can't tell. I've never heard of a small world having a cultivation method." "Then wait. Old Zhang and Blood Mary should be here today or tomorrow," Qin Zhao said. Bifla nodded. The 3 of them had talked on the phone before. The 3 placed great importance on this meeting. After all, in the current world, the 4 of them were already at the peak of humanity. No one could give them guidance. They had to figure it out themselves. If the 4 of them were still hiding things, in the end, none of them would be able to break through. If one of them could break through, the others would all die in the future. The person who broke through would also protect their heritage for the sake of their past relationship. This was based on their current status and future considerations. Thus, no one would hide things on their path of advancement. They couldn't hide things. Bifla had come publicly this time. Zhang Tianyi and 23rd Blood Mary were both very low-key. They didn't let anyone know that they'd come to Los Angeles. The 3 leaders were all here. Qin Zhao came to their gathering. Without wasting any time, he went straight to the topic. "Look at this first." Qin Zhao took out the cultivation method of the small world. "This." 23rd Blood Mary glanced at it and then shook her head. "I don't understand." Zhang Tianyi took it and studied it carefully for a long time. Then he looked up and asked, "This is used to cultivate the small world, right?" Qin Zhao nodded. 23rd Blood Mary's expression changed. In the past she'd always been under Zhang Tiany's name. She'd been a bit unwilling at first. But now she had to admit that Zhang Tiany's title of number one in the supernatural world wasn't just for show. The symbol of Shangqing is the small world. So, I'm thinking if the small world is the key to breaking through. Why do you think so? I don't think so. In the beginning, my goal was to cultivate the strength of my pocket world. However, after searching for half a day, I discovered that there was no cultivation technique for cultivating the strength of my pocket world. Instead, I found relevant information in an ancient book. Can I see that ancient book? Zhang Tiany asked. Qin Zhao shook his head. No. Zhang Tiany nodded. He didn't ask why. Since Qin Zhao had gathered them, he definitely wouldn't hide it for no reason. Since he hadn't taken it out, he must have his own reasons. Bifla and 23rd Blood Mary also understood. This cultivation method of the pocket world was obtained after I modified it from that ancient book. Apart from sharing and exchanging information, I also hope that you can help me perfect this cultivation method of the pocket world. Qin Zhao paused. Now, if you don't understand anything about this method, you can ask. I'll try to answer you. Chapter 2567. Qin Zhao, is it necessary to use Nirvana's flame to refine it? No, but Bifla and I both know Nirvana's fire, Qin Zhao said. But I'm not sure if other types of flames will work. When I was writing this, I tried using my Nirvana's fire. It works. It's also the only fire elemental spell I know. Nirvana's fire? Bifla taught it to you? Not really. We studied it together, Bifla said coolly. I only learned it before Qin Zhao and gave him some pointers, Bifla said indifferently. I also cultivate a fire elemental spell. I don't know if it works, Qin Zhao said. Zhang Tiany said, if it's not possible, I guess I'll have to use your Nirvana's flame cultivation method. I know hellfire, but I don't know if it works, 23rd Blood Mary said. I don't think you have to use fire, Bifla said. Bifla said, fire is used because it is the fastest way to achieve the effect of change. However, if there are other powers and attributes, it is not impossible to achieve the effect of change. Zhang Tiany thought for a moment and nodded. I can't be sure yet. After all, there's too little data. But if other elements work too, we just need to make some changes here. In terms of theory, the other three were all above Qin Zhao. The four discussed for a long time. None of them had any intention of stopping. If this segment were to be replaced with the Venerable Spirit Temple's Qi-devouring technique of Mount Longhu's Celestial Master Sect, it might have an extraordinary effect, Zhang Tiany said. The spiritual temple he was talking about was the highest cultivation method of Dragon Tiger Mountain's spiritual temple. It could only be cultivated by people in the Shangqing state. Since ancient times, the number of people who were qualified to cultivate this technique were few and far between. 23rd Blood Mary frowned. She looked at Zhang Tiany. Old Zhang, are you sure you want to take out the spiritual temple? I'm not taking it out. I'm just taking a part of the technique. I'll also modify it. If Qin Zhao's technique succeeds, we'll all benefit greatly. If that's the case, I also have an idea. This part can also be modified. There's a special breathing technique in my school's holy fire technique. If we combine it with this technique, the effect will be even more outstanding. The 23rd generation Blood Mary couldn't sit still any longer. Zhang Tiany and Bifla had both taken out their special arts. If she continued to keep it to herself, she would seem stingy. He might as well offer up the Scarlet Church's precious cultivation method for everyone's reference. Did you notice that the techniques we provided were meant for Shangqing realm cultivators to cultivate, but they weren't perfect? What Qin Zhao provided just so happened to make up for the flaws in our techniques. That's right. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. Although their ancestors might not be as strong as them, there was no lack of capable people among them. After all, everyone lived in a different era and they were limited by the era. Perhaps their cultivation was not as good as today's, but in terms of comprehension or talent, there might be people with great wisdom among the ancient people. They might be faking it or personally comprehending it. It wouldn't be surprising if they left some techniques behind. However, they still couldn't comprehend the most important thing. What they lacked now was exactly what Qin Zhao had given them. The two worked together. After removing the unnecessary and conflicting parts, they combined their cultivation techniques. A complete and perfect set of techniques was finally born with the four's hard work. Make a copy for yourselves. Qin Zhao's face was full of joy. He hadn't cultivated it yet, but at least he had some knowledge. He could tell that this set of techniques was more complete and advanced than the ones he'd taken out before. It's a pity that I can't cultivate it yet. Bifla sighed, but this didn't stop him from copying the cultivation technique. Why? His territory has just been formed. It's not stable yet and his cultivation is too low, the 23rd generation Blood Mary said. The 23rd Blood Mary said, even I might find it hard to cultivate. Among the four of us, only you and old Zhang can cultivate it directly. Zhang Qianni stroked his goatee. I also need to improve my cultivation after returning to the mountain. I think I'll have to take out the old pills. Otherwise, I won't be able to cultivate it in a short time. With that, Zhang Qianni looked at Qin Zhao. You're the youngest among us, but your cultivation is the most profound. I really don't know how you did it. That's how handsome people are. You can't be jealous. What's this set of techniques called? Just take one word from our names or titles and combine it, Zhang Qianni said loudly. I'll say sky. I can only say one word. Sky fire? Blood, the 23rd generation Blood Mary said. Fire, Bifla said. Blood fire? Fire blood? Sky fire? Sky blood. In the end, the four of them combined their words and came up with a name, Sky Fire Blood Roar. Qin Zhao sighed. He wondered if it was because the higher one's cultivation level was, the worse their names were. The other three also looked like they'd been fed shit. Forget it. Change the name, Bifla said. I think it's embarrassing to cultivate a technique with such a name. Then give it a good name. Qin Zhao snapped his fingers. If we can't think of a good name, we can find someone else. Who? A professional. Qin Zhao took out his phone. Zhang Ting, gather everyone for a long-distance video conference. Zhang Ting was frustrated. She felt that Qin Zhao was going to ask a ridiculous question again. Boss, everyone's here. What instructions do you have for our work? Give me a name for a cultivation technique. It's best if it's a cultivation technique used to cultivate the domain. It's best if it's amazing and awesome. Zhang Ting and the employees discussed for a while and suggested a few names. Qin Zhao and the others weren't satisfied. The new employees were all confused. They didn't know Qin Zhao, the big boss. But all the old employees knew Qin Zhao. At the moment, they were all thinking seriously, even more so than when they were working. Boss, I think the final form of a domain should be a complete universe. Why don't we call it 9 changes of the firmament? It can be divided into 9 levels. The first level is to have a domain, the second level is to evolve into a small world, the third level is to evolve into a galaxy, the fourth level, Qin Zhao, Bifla, Zhang Qianni, and the 23rd generation Blood Mary's expressions changed. In an instant, all four of them felt their thoughts become clear. Direction. Their direction was pointed out by an ordinary person. Evolving their domain into a universe was too far away for them, but the idea wasn't wrong. Chapter 2568. Okay, firmament transformation it is. Qin Zhao snapped his fingers and said, same rules. This is a good idea. The reward is $100,000. The new employees in the company were all dumbfounded. How could such nonsense get a reward of $100,000? Had the boss lost his mind? Also, why did the old employees look like it was only natural? Right. They all looked constipated just now. Were they racking their brains? Did they know this would happen? Boss, it's firmament transformation, not firmament transformation. Okay, you did well. This meeting is over. Boss. I have an idea too. Boss, listen to me. Boss, give me a chance. Unfortunately, Qin Zhao had already hung up. Everyone looked at Qin Zhao deep in thought. They'd all realized the importance of a team. The team was made up of ordinary people. However, their minds were very active and different from ordinary people. Evolving a domain into a universe might be too unlikely. But what about a small world? The last piece of the puzzle they needed was finally complete. I'm going back, Zhang Qianni said. He couldn't wait. When all his thoughts were clear, he'd regained his confidence. I'm going back too. So were Bifla and 23rd Blood Mary. They were still a distance away from cultivating this technique. However, they still hoped that they could start cultivating as soon as possible. After a short farewell, the four went their separate ways. Qin Zhao returned to the manor. His family was already asleep. He entered the river diagram and started cultivating firmament transformation. Qin Zhao spread out the nirvana flame and let it circulate in the heavenly pattern. Firmament transformation wasn't expanding the small world. It was changing the small world. The change was very subtle. Even if Qin Zhao circulated the technique for a full day, it wouldn't even grow by 1,000th. However, Qin Zhao could really feel that his domain was changing. Qin Zhao patiently circulated the firmament transformation over and over again. Under Qin Zhao's control, the heavenly pattern in the small world was like an old tree sprouting. It began to glow with life again. Unknowingly, it extended outwards. Qin Zhao's domain expanded a little. Moreover, the heavenly patterns in the small world seemed to be flourishing too. Qin Zhao thought of a question. Why hadn't the heavenly patterns changed in the past? According to his previous conjecture, Earth was the inner core of a supreme expert, and the heavenly patterns were the meridians. But now that the super powerhouse was dead, the heavenly pattern lost its vitality. No longer changed by the majority of the power. But now, with his own power, it was rejuvenated. Was it because of the Nirvana flame? If the Nirvana flame was the key, then old Zhang and the 23rd generation Blood Mary would have to ask him and Biflo for a cultivation technique. They would also need the Red Eagle's blood. At that time, he would be able to extort a huge sum of money from them. Qin Zhao gathered his thoughts and increased his speed. It took about 2 hours for each cycle to complete a full cycle. Furthermore, every complete revolution would cause the domain to change by 0.001%. However, the process of cultivation was very boring. But Qin Zhao didn't plan to stop halfway. Last time on Demon Island, he was plotted against by Leviathan at Baron Tajimas and was almost sealed by him. This gave Qin Zhao a great sense of danger. This world was far more dangerous than he had imagined. Qin Zhao tirelessly cultivated the celestial transformation again and again. When Qin Zhao reached 200 cycles, the power of the small world had more than doubled. Moreover, the small world actually started producing vitality. Although the vitality produced by the small world was insignificant, Qin Zhao really felt that the small world was producing vitality. This vitality wasn't as much as the vitality that Qin Zhao lost under normal circumstances. The increase and decrease in vitality slowed down Qin Zhao's aging speed. Of course, this was also indirectly extending Qin Zhao's lifespan. According to this theory, the higher one's cultivation level was, the more life force the small world could produce. Would he really be able to achieve immortality one day? Qin Zhao suddenly had even more motivation. He started cultivating again. However, to Qin Zhao's disappointment, although the small world kept strengthening, it didn't produce more vitality like he had expected. Time flew in the river diagram. Qin Zhao's small world had strengthened several times. Although it had strengthened several times, there wasn't much change in its nature. Qin Zhao felt that vitality was more like the fruit that the small world had produced. If Qin Zhao didn't absorb it, the fruit would slowly grow. Moreover, the heavenly pattern that was close to Qin Zhao's body could be moved freely. Qin Zhao stayed here for almost 3 months. When he returned to reality, it had been less than 2 hours. Qin Zhao snuck back to his room and went to bed without a sound. Because of Qin Zhao's habit, he would go out in the middle of the night from time to time. He would sleep later than Fei Lai every time. So, Qin Zhao had long mastered the ability to sneak into bed without anyone noticing. He had a good sleep. Qin Zhao, who had just fallen asleep, suddenly opened his eyes. He wondered if he could inject vitality into Fei Lai's body through the small world. Qin Zhao put a hand on Fei Lai's waist. He controlled the heavenly pattern and connected it to Fei Lai's skin. Fei Lai moaned softly. She seemed to feel Qin Zhao's movements. Her eyes were still closed, but one of her legs was already on Qin Zhao's body. Qin Zhao didn't stop cultivating. His hands weren't idle either. "Darling, are you asleep?" Fine." Qin Zhao wouldn't be polite. An hour later. After being tormented by Qin Zhao for so long, Fei Lai didn't feel sleepy anymore. "Do you want to sleep a bit more?" "No, I feel very energetic," Fei Lai said. "Okay, I'll continue my experiment," Qin Zhao said. "Experiment? What experiment? You're using me as a test subject?" "It's good for you." Qin Zhao reached out and grabbed Fei Lai. "Don't move. I've read a Taoist book before. There's a technique called dual cultivation. Is that what you're using now?" "I don't know how." Qin Zhao rolled his eyes and continued to inject vitality into Fei Lai. "I feel something seeping into my skin. Did you do it?" "Yes." Qin Zhao nodded. It seemed that the vitality condensed by his small world could indeed be given to Fei Lai. However, it wasn't a lot for Fei Lai. It seemed that he would have to wait until the small world produced enough vitality before giving it to Fei Lai. This bit of vitality was only enough for 1 or 2 days. Chapter 2569. With Qin Zhao's life force, Fei Lai seemed to be full of energy. They couldn't sleep, so the two started making babies again. Suddenly, Fei Lai felt Qin Zhao's movements pause. "What's wrong?" "In the sea," Qin Zhao said. "A servant I once enslaved has moved to the designated location." Nanchi Island, which Sardin was carrying, had already moved to Qin Zhao's private sea. 30 minutes later, Qin Zhao picked up the phone. Rasfa, time's up. What time? Qin, can't you see what time it is? Okay, sorry to bother you. Watch the news tomorrow. What are you talking about? Rasfa was still in a daze. His brain hadn't even recovered yet. Why? Qin Zhao hung up and then called Risfar, Stephen and Del. The last one was Amira. Then Amira called Qin Zhao back. Qin, are you talking about the investment project last time? What's the specific situation? You'll know soon. Qin Zhao didn't say it directly. Amira wanted to ask more, but Qin Zhao quickly hung up. Amira immediately changed. Last time, Qin Zhao had told her about the investment. He only told her to keep some cash on hand for investment. But he didn't say what the project was exactly. He only said that it was on the sea. But what kind of project could there be? Fish farming? Stop joking. They were all billion-dollar people. Unless the farming industry could make more than 50% profit, they wouldn't be interested. Moreover, farming had always been a business that relied on the weather. Now that the pollution was so serious, farming in the sea was even more unreliable. Sometimes, a large ship might accidentally drop something, and all the creatures in the sea would die. So, it definitely wouldn't be farming. Just then, Amelia felt a slight tremor beneath her feet. The furniture in the room was also making soft noises. Earthquake? Although Los Angeles was in an earthquake zone, most earthquakes were senseless or mild. Just then the tremors grew stronger. Then the earthquake alarm sounded in the city. Amira didn't panic. Instead, she quickly ran out of the room to the lawn outside. As the tremors grew stronger, Amira silently waited for the earthquake to end. The tremor reached its limit after half a minute, but it did not weaken. Instead, it lasted for several minutes. Generally speaking, earthquakes rarely lasted for such a long time. Although the earthquake just now was strong, it was not destructive. A thought flashed through Amira's mind without any reason. This earthquake was related to what Qin Zhao had said on the phone. The earthquake subsided, but not long after, the tsunami warning came again. As a coastal city, especially a coastal city located in an earthquake zone, it was a coastal city. As long as there was an earthquake, it would be accompanied by a tsunami. However, judging from the tremor just now, the tsunami wouldn't be very big. The next day, a piece of news spread throughout the world. At 4:25 a.m. last night, a small island appeared in the sea 900 kilometers southwest of Los Angeles. It was an island of about 20 square kilometers. According to the analysis of geologists, this island may have been pushed to the surface by the movement of the continental plate. At this moment, a research ship was approaching the island rising from the bottom of the sea. Katua Viller lifted his right leg. This is hell. We can't help it, Katuo's assistant said helplessly. The island rose from the sea less than 5 hours ago. There's mud under our feet. At the moment there were still puddles on the island. Everywhere was covered in thick mud. There were even dead bodies of dehydrated sea creatures in some places. Logically speaking, the tremor last night shouldn't have been able to lift an island like this. This is too strange. Look at that mountain. It's at least 500 meters high. This means that the mountain has risen at least 500 meters from sea level. But for it to rise that much, it needs a stronger earthquake. However, at this moment, a helicopter suddenly appeared above their heads. Katua Viller and his team all raised their heads to look at the helicopter. Just then the helicopter landed before them. A woman and 2 fully armed bodyguards alighted from the helicopter. Just like them, the woman was wearing boots and it was very difficult for her to walk. Alex cursed Qin Zhao in her heart. However, she did not show it on her face. She approached Katua Viller. Who are you? Katua Viller looked at the woman before him in confusion. I should be asking you that, Alex said. You're on private land. I want you to leave immediately. Private land? Are you kidding? This is American land. No, this sea area was bought by my boss half a year ago, so in principle, everything in this sea area belongs to my boss, including this island. What? How is that possible? This is the open sea. Why did your boss buy it? Katua Viller asked. In fact, she had asked Qin Zhao the same question half a year ago. But she finally had an answer. But even she could not be sure if this was part of Qin Zhao's plan. After all, it was unbelievable for an island to suddenly appear from the sea. Or did Qin Zhao have a super geological team that calculated this half a year ago? With Qin Zhao's wealth, this was really possible. We're a research team, Tocqueville explained. We're not a profit-making organization. We have no conflict with your boss. Private land was sacred and inviolable. This was the law. No reason could be used to violate this iron law. Even if they used the excuse that they were part of a scientific expedition team, it was still unacceptable. Without the permission of the owner, no one could enter casually. At this moment, someone suddenly exclaimed, "What's that? Look, what's that?" Beside a puddle in the distance, something was pushing up the mud on the ground. It was a huge lobster. At least it looked like a lobster. It had a hard shell and huge pincers. When its body was pushed up, it seemed to be 2 meters tall. Everyone was stunned. What was that? Just then, the lobster started picking up the dead fish with its pincers and started eating. It did not seem to care about the people in the distance. Crack. The sound of the camera woke Alex up. "Everyone get out of here. Take the film from that guy's camera." Alex almost screamed as she gave the order. "No, it's my personal property. You can't do this. You bunch of bandits and bandits. 9 heavens, divine king." Chapter 2570. At this moment, Alex finally understood the value of the island. This was a treasure trove. An unparalleled treasure. A completely new species. It wasn't one that ordinary people couldn't tell apart. It was a giant lobster just like the legends. This kind of thing could bring a huge amount of wealth. Alex's eyes turned red. She'd asked Qin Zhao before she could enter. But Qin Zhao's answer was that she didn't have enough money and couldn't enter. But it was different now. She had more than $300 million. She definitely had the right to enter. Alex took out her phone and dialed Qin Zhao's number. "Qin, I found something amazing on the island. No matter what you found, it's mine." "Boss, you know what's here? Do you really think I'd throw dollars into the water?" Alex took a deep breath. She was sure that Qin Zhao already knew what was here. Perhaps his team had discovered these creatures a long time ago and calculated that the island might float up. So he'd spent $5 million to buy this area. She had to admit that if it were her, she'd do the same thing. "Oh boss, when should we expose this? Isn't there a research ship?" "Let them do it," Qin Zhao said. "Got it." Alex nodded. Glancing at the camera that the security guard had snatched away, she said to the bodyguard, "Forget it. Give it back." The security guard glanced at the staff member he'd kicked. "You're lucky." "Chase them out," Alex said. Alex said, "Send more people. Sink all the ships that approach this area without permission." "You can't do this. We have the right to stay here." The security guards didn't give them a chance. They kicked and shoved the team members away. That afternoon, the media all over the world reposted a piece of news. There was also a photo and a short video attached to the article. The photo was of a giant lobster. There was also a line of text. Then the world went crazy. Such a giant lobster. Was this not CGI? In addition, there was a video of a turtle that was more than 6 meters long slowly crawling out of the sea. However, the video was too short. Meanwhile, Steven, Rasfa, Risfar, Amira, Del, and Zola all called Qin Zhao like crazy. "Steven, I've already told everyone to come to my place for a meeting. Don't call again or I'll block you. They'll be here soon." Not long after, all 6 of them finally arrived. Everyone couldn't wait to get first-hand information. Although the appearance of a new island was novel, similar things had happened in the past and more than once, so its value was not high. However, in today's news that was spreading like wildfire all over the world, the things revealed by that photo and that video were too precious. "All right, quiet down," Qin Zhao shouted. "Are you guys going to let me talk?" These people all seemed to have fallen into money. They didn't give Qin Zhao a chance to speak at all. "Here's most of the information on the island." Qin Zhao tossed the prepared documents before everyone. Everyone fought with each other, directly tearing apart the information. Qin Zhao crossed his legs and ignored them. In the end, Steven was the first to get the torn information. Giant lobster, up to 3.5 meters long to 8 meters tall when standing upright, 580 kilograms in weight. Scavengers not aggressive towards living creatures. Giant turtle, up to 6.5 meters long for 8 meters wide, 2,800 kilograms in weight. Feeds on small and medium-sized fish. Not aggressive towards humans. Giant crab, up to 4 meters long, 660 kilograms in weight. Omnivorous, not aggressive towards humans. Giant eel, up to 18 meters long, 1.8 meters wide, 3,900 kilograms in weight. All living creatures are their targets. Extremely aggressive. Ichthyosaur, social amphibian. Up to 30 centimeters long, 15 kilograms in weight. Vegetarian. Knows how to use simple tools. Intelligence is close to that of primates. Everyone looked at the information on the information as if they were looking at a new world of novelty. There were 5 new species recorded on it, and each of them was very special. Just imagine it was like the dinosaur island in the movie Jurassic World. Once a complete tourism industry was established, there would be an endless stream of tourists. This island was a treasure trove, a mountain of gold that hadn't been developed yet. Everyone present was a smart person and they knew how valuable this island was. The island is too small, Risfar said. We need to fill the sea, but we can't destroy the island's ecology. Risfar was a businessman and had a clear mind. He knew that the island's greatest treasure was its unique ecology. However, the island was too small. It couldn't accommodate too many tourists. A high-quality tourist island not only had all kinds of facilities, but it also had to have a certain amount of space. If tourists came to the island and found it crowded, they would only lose interest. Okay, let's talk about the share distribution, Xinjiao said. I want 30% of the 200 million, and you guys can split the remaining 70%. Also, this is just for buying shares. You need money to build the island too. The money will be used to buy shares. Among them, Zola had the least assets. Even including her Baroness brand, she only had $2 billion in assets. She didn't even have $100 million in cash. However, the opportunity to make money was right in front of her. She didn't want to give it up. No, this wasn't a chance to make money. It was a chance to leave a legacy for 100 years. Zola, how much cash can you take out? Rasfa asked in a low voice. The father and daughter had different identities, but they were father and daughter after all. They had to make up for each other at critical times. 100 million, Zola said in a low voice. How come so little? Didn't Xinjiao tell you about this before? He did, but I didn't think much about it. Rasfa was upset, but he didn't take it to heart. That wasn't the whole truth. He still kept an eye on Xinjiao. He felt that Xinjiao wouldn't lie to him, so he still kept 500 million. Therefore, he only had 500 million US dollars on hand. Amelia's wealth was probably the highest after Risfar's. However, a large portion of her money was used to pay for Xinjiao's gold purchase. Therefore, she didn't have much cash to use. Of course, it wasn't that she couldn't afford it if she included her other businesses. However, the businesses that could be used to pay were all high-quality businesses that wouldn't be sold easily. Xinjiao had told them so early because he wanted to give them enough time to prepare. He wanted them to have enough time to accumulate cash and liquidate some secondary and tertiary businesses. Xinjiao wouldn't accept them if they used secondary and tertiary businesses as payment. Chapter 2571. Xinjiao, I have some scattered shares, Risfar said. They're worth more than 500 million. Risfar, you don't have enough money? I think they don't have enough. If they don't want it, I can buy it for them. Rasfa wasn't familiar with Risfar. He'd only met him a few times through Xinjiao. They didn't have any interactions in private, so at this moment he didn't give them any face at all. I don't need your kindness. Which eye of yours thinks I don't have enough money? Qin, I need a few days, Rasfa said. How about I provide a plan? Xinjiao asked. Tell me the price you want and then get a loan from me. Tell me your price and get a loan from me. The interest will be the bank's lowest interest rate. Of course, even if you're short on money, I won't force you. After all, we're still friends. If anyone can't get it, I can give you a year. If you still can't repay the loan after a year, then you can use your assets to pay me back. This is our agreement and my promise, Xinjiao said. Qin, are you sure you want to lend us money? Rasfa asked, looking at Xinjiao. Do you know how much I need? He just got a sum of money, Amira said. $10 billion. Everyone gasped. Dell looked at Xinjiao. Qin, what did you do this time? Did you sell the brewery? He sold 300 tons of gold to the bank. Everyone gasped again. 300 tons of gold. You didn't find the treasure island, did you? I fished it out of the sea, Xinjiao said, chuckling. He indeed had too much cash now. He wanted to sell it and collect some interest. Of course, the people before him were all his good friends. He couldn't give them high-interest loans, could he? So he could only provide low-interest loans. Even so, Xinjiao could only provide low-interest loans. In the end, the 6 of them bought 52% of the shares. They really couldn't buy more. For example, Zola bought 3% of the shares. She wouldn't be able to eat any more. Xinjiao had lent her $500 million for the 3% shares. Of course, she could borrow more money to buy more shares. But if that was the case, she wouldn't be able to hold on. After all, this money required interest. But before the completion of Nanqi Island's construction, it would not generate any profits. The basic construction of Nanqi Island would take at least a year. In other words, in a year's time she would not be able to earn any profits. Furthermore, the investment in the infrastructure also depended on the proportion of their shares. The first budget for construction was $10 billion. If Zola bought 3% of the shares, she would have to invest $300 million. She still had to ask Qin Zhao for a loan. This meant that she had to pay back Qin Zhao's $800 million loan. Based on the bank's lowest interest rate, Zola would have to pay back a few $1 billion in total. Her Baroness's annual net profit was only a little more than $100 million. In the first 2 years, almost all of the Baroness's profits were used to pay off the money she owed Qin Zhao. Of course, as long as Nanqi Island started to make a profit, the pressure on her would also be greatly reduced. However, according to their plan, they still needed to invest more money in the infrastructure. As for the money he lent out, it was basically transferred from his left hand to his right hand. The one who bought the most was Risfar. He was the most well-prepared. He spent $3 billion for 15% of the shares. The second was actually Dell. To be honest, Dell was not very rich, but he actually bought 11% of the shares. Even Qin Zhao did not expect Dell to be able to take out $2 billion. Both Risfar and Risfar knew Qin Zhao's background, so they knew many secrets that no one else knew. In fact, only Rasfa and Zola did not know about Qin Zhao's supernatural powers. Amira and Steven knew too. Amira bought 10% of the shares while Rasfa bought 7%. Steven bought 6%. Qin Zhao still had 48% of the shares. Qin, you still have 48% of the shares. Do you plan to keep them or sell them? There's a lot of profit involved, so it's best to get more people in, Qin Zhao said. But if outsiders want to buy, it won't be for 1% of the shares. It'll be 200 million. Qin Zhao had already decided. Apart from the 3% he would reserve for Alex, the others would have to look at their status first, followed by their wealth. Why would they join without status? Rich. There were too many rich people in the world. As a profitable project, any rich person would want to do it. Alex's phone had already been ringing off the hook today. They all wanted to talk to her boss. They weren't idiots. For example, there were not many islands in the world with better project resources. Hawaii's only advantage was its sunny beaches, spring all year round, and a few crater volcanoes. But Hawaii's GPD had reached $700 billion last year. Tourism accounted for 70% of the GPD. Nanqi Island's project was much better than Hawaii's. As long as Nanqi Island's GPD could reach 10% of Hawaii's, it would be a huge profit for the shareholders. Should we give the island a name? Qin Zhao asked. He didn't plan on using the name Nanqi Island anymore. After all, the name was a sensitive one. As a pirate base, some people still knew about Nanqi Island. To avoid unnecessary trouble, Qin Zhao felt that it was better to give it a new name. The creatures on the island are all huge, Risfar said. Let's call it Titan Island. No, it's not special. The island's ecosystem is self-contained. How about calling it Creator Island? It sounds like some evil organization's experimental island. Are you sure tourists will come after hearing this name? Mystical Island, Steven said calmly. Mystical Island? Isn't that too ordinary? Yeah, I think it's ordinary too. Everyone was questioning Steven's naming standard. But Steven said calmly, the more ordinary it is, the more effective it is. Mystical Island. This name can make people curious about the island. It doesn't need a fancy name. Everyone looked at each other. They seemed to be moved by Steven's words. How about we hold the first shareholder meeting and vote to decide if we should give the island this name? Qin Zhao asked. Sure, let's vote. Chapter 2572. Mysterious Island. Those who agree raise your hands. 5 yes and 2 no, Qin Zhao said. Then it'll be called Mysterious Island from now on. By the way, Qin, Steven suddenly asked, the ingredients I took from you in the past aren't from Mysterious Island, right? What ingredients? Amira asked. Qin Zhao's face darkened. Great, now he had another pair of hands. An hour later, isn't this too good? Amira exclaimed. What ingredients are these? I've never had such good food before. Qin, can you supply them in bulk? Limited, Qin Zhao said. But he suddenly thought of Demon Island's otherworldly god. It tasted better. Compared to Qin Zhao's other ingredients, he could supply more of them. These top-level delicacies are definitely the best way to attract customers, Amira said. Qin Zhao thought about it. Every year he would take 5 otherworldly gods from Demon Island. This wasn't enough. An adult otherworldly god would at most be 40 tons. 5 would be 200 tons. 200 tons wasn't enough for an island's tourists. I have another ingredient that's better, Qin Zhao said. But the supplier can only supply 100 tons a year. 100 tons isn't a lot, but it's not a lot either. Indeed, it's a bit awkward. Qin, then let's open a top-level restaurant on the island and invite Michelin magazine to cover it a few times. Didn't you say that Michelin magazine can't be bribed? Bullshit. Even the congressman can be bribed. Why do you think the editors of Michelin magazine can't be bribed? Are they better? No problem opening a restaurant, but the ingredients need to be paid separately. Give us the ingredients first. We need to evaluate it ourselves. Stephen grinned. He'd gotten a lot of ingredients from Qin Zhao. He knew how good Qin Zhao's ingredients were. After eating Qin Zhao's ingredients, he even felt that the other top-level ingredients were trash. Having a strong appetite was a scary thing. It would make people lose their expectations for most delicacies. Everyone was also very interested in the top-level ingredients Qin Zhao mentioned. The ingredients Qin Zhao had taken out were already enough to fill their stomachs. But they weren't even the top-level ingredients Qin Zhao mentioned. How good would the top-grade ingredients be? Okay. Qin Zhao stood up and went into the kitchen. Soon Qin Zhao came out with a large square piece of meat. Although this piece of meat had been frozen, it was placed in a low-temperature area, so the meat retained its original texture. It had to be said that the god of otherworldlings was a top-notch ingredient. It made sense that even the great demon king couldn't resist its flesh. Let's not talk about its taste, just the cut pattern alone was like an exquisite painting. After the spirit qi it carried fused with the meat itself, it emitted a faint fragrance. Even if it wasn't cooked yet, it was already enough to make people hungry. Rumble, Stephen gulped. Fuck, if you have such good ingredients, why haven't I seen you take them out? Stephen said, wiping his mouth. At this moment, Amira narrowed his eyes and said, I think 100 tons is too much. 100 kilograms a day should be enough. Everyone could not help but glance at Amelia before nodding thoughtfully. Indeed, no matter how good things were, if there were too many of them, others might not treasure them. The rarer something was, the greater its value. If you have extra, sell it to me. Amira suddenly laughed. In your dreams? Stephen snorted. He wouldn't give Amira any face. So what if Amira was richer than him? Regardless, the six of them still managed to extort a piece of meat from Qin Zhao. They'd already tasted it at Qin Zhao's house. Alex, how much do you plan on buying? Qin Zhao asked. Alex gulped down the water in her glass. She'd been really busy today. Because she was Qin Zhao's representative. So she was also brought to the public. Everyone was asking about the cooperation. Even some top-tier crocodiles wanted to get a share. But hearing Qin Zhao's question, Alex felt even more pained. She thought that she was already very rich. Last time, she'd gotten $290 million from Qin Zhao's commission. Adding on her miscellaneous assets, her total was over $300 million. But Qin Zhao, that D*Ned bastard, asked for $200 million for each 1% of the shares. In other words, she couldn't even afford 2% with her current cash. Even if she used her assets as collateral, she could only get $20 to $30 million. How many more shares do you plan on selling? Alex asked. My friend already bought most of the shares, Qin Zhao said. I need to reserve 30% for myself, so there's 18% left. Alex really wanted to wave her hand generously and say, I'll take care of the rest. Unfortunately, she didn't have the courage. Even for her, 2% of the shares was too much. She couldn't eat it. Even though she knew that every bit of the shares was priceless, she couldn't help it. But she just couldn't eat it. How about this? Qin Zhao said. I'll lend you the money for 3% of the shares. No interest. Alex stared blankly for a moment, then silently nodded. Just then Qin Zhao received a call from Denver. Denver, what's up? Mr. Qin, that island is yours, right? Qin Zhao was stunned. How did Denver know? How did you know? Ms. Alex is your personal lawyer. Fine. Mr. Qin, do you have any development plans for the island that has emerged from the sea? Yes, but it's a big project. Qin Zhao wanted Denver to back off. But Denver didn't back off. Instead, he said, Mr. Qin, no matter how big it is, I hope to get involved. Mr. Denver, do you know the conditions? I have $1 billion, Denver said. You're that rich? Mr. Qin, did you forget? I also have shares in Dash and Beer. But those shares can't be sold, Qin Zhao said. If you want to sell it, you can only sell it to me. This was the condition when Qin Zhao had given Denver the shares as a bonus. If Denver wanted to sell the shares, he could only sell them to Qin Zhao at 120% of the market price. I can mortgage it to the bank, so it's not impossible for me to take out $1 billion. Do you know how much someone offered me? I don't know, but I asked around and found out that someone offered Ms. Alex $1.55 billion for 3% of the shares. Chapter 2573. Money doesn't mean you can buy shares, Qin Zhao said calmly. At the end of the day, Denver was just working for him. So, Qin Zhao didn't have to give Denver face. Mr. Qin, I know a friend, a very rich friend. Qin Zhao asked, unconcerned. There were countless rich people in the world. That person also wants to buy shares. What does that have to do with you buying shares? I know where his bottom line is. Denver, make it clear. I don't like secretive conversations. I want to buy 2% of the shares for 1% and $500 million, Denver said. In exchange, I'll tell you what his bottom line is. Like I said, not everyone is qualified to buy it. There are many rich people contacting Alex, and I don't think your friend is the richest. It was time to split the cake. The people who could buy shares were either people close to Qin Zhao or people with power. For example, people who could cause trouble for the project. Amira was one of them. Qin Zhao had pulled her in from the start not only because they knew each other, but also because of her family's power. If there was any trouble in the future, Amira and her family would definitely intervene out of consideration for their own interests. Mr. Qin, maybe I don't have the right, but that person definitely does. Tell me who he is. Cruise King Jane Fankel. Qin Zhao was unfamiliar with the name, or rather he had never heard of it before. However, Alex was right beside him. Covering the phone, Qin Zhao asked, do you know the Cruise King Jane Fankel? I know. The initiator of the biggest merger in the last century is Jane Fankel, who swallowed up the former cruise line giant. She is currently at the helm of the world's largest cruise line, Caribbean Empire Cruise Line. Caribbean Empire Cruise Line owns 28 top-class cruise ships, including 6 of the world's top 10 cruise ships. The deep blue of the ocean owned by the company is the largest and most luxurious cruise ship in the world. Mr. Qin, if I were you, I definitely wouldn't reject Jane Fankel's shares, Denver said. Denver said, you should know how many excellent passengers each cruise ship can bring to you. Qin Zhao didn't deny it. In fact, he was already tempted. Jane Fankel had the right to buy shares. She's buying shares? Or the Caribbean Empire Cruise Line. It's an individual, but it will soon become the Caribbean Empire Cruise Line, because this company will soon be delisted and become Jane Fankel's personal property. Then what's his bottom line? $2 billion, Denver said. Qin Zhao froze. Wasn't the price too high? How could Jane Fankel come up with so much money? Are you sure you didn't report it wrong? Even Qin Zhao himself didn't dare to value Mysterious Island, which still had nothing, at $200 billion. The other party actually dared to directly give $2 billion for 1% of the shares? It was like a sunrise industry no matter how great the future was. No one dared to say how much this industry was worth before it generated any profits. I'm sure I'm right, Denver said. How many shares does Jane Fankel plan to buy? Qin Zhao asked. 10%. You mean he's going to spend $20 billion to buy 10% of the Mysterious Island shares? Are you sure he can afford it? No, it's using the shares of the Caribbean Empire Cruise Company to exchange for shares of equal value. Qin Zhao raised an eyebrow. Is the Caribbean Empire Cruise Line valued at $200 billion? Yes, Denver answered. Denver replied, Caribbean Empire Cruise Line's operation and profits in recent years have been very impressive. Last year's profit reached $8.9 billion. The average profit of each cruise reached $310 million. Caribbean Empire Cruise Line's routes cover all the deep water ports in the world. At the same time, it also delivers hundreds of thousands of high-quality tourists to major ports. Qin Zhao raised an eyebrow. I don't think it's a good idea to reveal his bottom line like this. Mr. Qin, do you think I'd say so much without his permission? Did this Jane Fankel send you to test me? Yes. Also, I need to correct your grammar. You should call her madam. Okay. Qin Zhao was a bit awkward. How about you? How many shares do you plan to buy? 2%. $1 billion, Denver said. This was also the maximum amount of shares he could buy. He obviously couldn't compare to Jane Fankel. Sure. But I need to contact Jane Fankel first before I can trade with you. Of course. You can set the time. After ending the call with Denver, Qin Zhao turned to Alex. Your job's here. Qin, I'm actually your lawyer, not a business consultant. I don't even want to charge you interest. Can't you do me a small favor? Fine. Tell me about the situation first. Qin Zhao told her what he'd heard from Denver. You want to facilitate this share swap? Yes. In the short term you'll benefit from this share swap, but in the long term you won't. How many years will it take for Mysterious Island to be valued at $200 billion? Although the Caribbean Empire Cruise Line is very profitable, it has reached its limit. Moreover, the competition in the cruise industry is very fierce. If they can't find a new source of customers and a deep-water port, they will go downhill. What Jane Fankel is interested in is the new source of customers on the mystical island. Although her cruise line can bring a lot of tourists, she can also get more customers. Moreover, the mystical island doesn't lack the cooperation of cruise lines. Even without the Caribbean Empire Cruise Line, there will be other cruise lines trying to get in front of us. You don't have to worry about whether there will be a cruise line willing to dock. So, I'm losing money in this deal? There's no such thing as profit or loss in business. I'm just stating our current position. We don't need them, but they definitely can't do without us. They should be the ones who are anxious. You can ask for more. It looks like we have the upper hand, but with their current valuation, I don't think they'll be willing to pay more than a 1:1 ratio. I don't think we can increase the share swap ratio, but we can make them pay more. How much more do you think they'll pay? If it's a few $100 million, forget it. What if it's $5 billion? Are you sure you can do it? Qin Zhao couldn't believe it. He felt that Alex was asking for too much. In fact, Qin Zhao even felt that the prices he'd given his friends were like cabbages. Chapter 2574. The news outside was still everywhere. But Qin Zhao wasn't affected at all, as if it had nothing to do with him. This was the benefit of being a non-listed company. So what if someone found out his identity? He still had to follow the basic rules of the game. If someone purposely published all of his information in order to force Qin Zhao could have all the nude photos of his family appear in the magazine. Therefore, when facing a super-rich person, no one would easily cross the bottom line. Once the bottom line was crossed, it would become a game without a bottom line. It was like a nuclear weapon. When everyone could use it, no one dared to use it. Then Qin Zhao, Steven, Rasfa, Zola, Amira, Risfar, and Del recommended representatives to form a team. Qin Zhao's representative was, of course, Alex. They all represented their own interests. At the same time, the team was in charge of planning the promotion and development of Mysterious Island. They were also in charge of contacting the outside world, such as service companies, hotels, shopping malls, luxury stores, supermarkets, and so on. Even the Disney Corporation tried to contact them. But for the amusement park project, everyone wanted to open it themselves. It would be completely different from other amusement parks. Qin Zhao didn't need to worry about these trivial matters. Most of the time he only needed to sign. Fuck, all the police in New York are looking for us. Fidek is dead too, Rock is dead too, and Nanier is dead too. Her head was cut in half by a bullet. Only the three of us are left now. There were 4 people hiding in the small house in the woods. They had just robbed a bank and got $300,000, and they managed to get away. But the price was that 3 of their friends had died. And because in the course of the robbery they shot 4 police officers. All the police in New York were looking for them like crazy. They couldn't move an inch now, even though they had $300,000. But they didn't even dare to go out of the woods. Knock, knock. Just then slow footsteps came from outside. It was the sound of thick-soled shoes stepping on wooden boards. However, the footsteps sounded a little strange. The 4 people in the house immediately stood up and glanced at each other. They raised their weapons at the same time. Pavel, you're being followed? No? How could that be? Popper immediately shook his head. It definitely wasn't me. At this moment, Sedmer was behind the door with his shotgun. The other 3 also found cover. Some hid behind the fireplace while others put down the table and hid behind it. Creak. The door of the wooden house was slowly pushed open. A familiar figure appeared in front of everyone. However, Sadmar, who was hiding behind the door, did not notice who it was. He smashed the back of the man's head with the butt of his gun. The man staggered a few steps but did not fall to the ground. Don't move. Sidmar shouted. Stop, stop, stop. She's Nanier, Perwell shouted. At this moment, Sadmar also stopped and stared at the familiar figure in disbelief. Nanier stood there, her body dripping with blood, her hair disheveled. There was a very obvious gap in her head. However, from the gap in the skull, what he saw wasn't brain juice, but a piece of gray flesh. At first they wanted to protect Nanier, but now they all backed away. A human brain was definitely not like that. Nanier twisted her neck. Her every movement gave everyone goosebumps. even if they were all extremely vicious and evil people. But when faced with Nanier's abnormal behavior, they all shuddered. "My friends, is this how you treat your friend, your boss?" Nanier said in a low voice. Even though it was just her voice, it was enough to make people shudder. You're not Nanier. Who are you? What are you?" Popper asked in a low voice. The pistol in his hand was still raised. "I'm Nanier. Is there a problem with that?" "No, Nanier is a human, you're not. Ha! I'm the one who gathered you and united you. As for the past, Nanier, you don't need to know her. You don't need to know her." Nanier reached out and brushed her messy hair back. At the same time, she covered the hole in her skull. "I fought alone outside and killed all the policemen, but you left me behind. This makes me very angry." Only then did everyone notice that Nanier was covered in blood. There were at least 30 police officers and a dozen police cars chasing them. All by her. Just then Nanier reached out and pulled out a bullet from the gun in her stomach. Then her arms, chest, thighs and back. She pulled out bullets one by one. "Are you still going to point your guns at me?" Popper and the others exchanged glances and finally lowered their guns. "Nanier? Boss, who exactly are you?" They could tell that bullets weren't much of a threat to Nanier. They definitely didn't have as much ammo as the 30 police officers. Since Nanier could kill 30 police officers, she could probably kill a few of them too. It would be very unwise to point their guns at him now. "Anyway, you're my subordinates. As long as you don't betray me, I won't abandon you," Nanier said calmly. "Now, can someone get me some food? I need to replenish my energy. If you don't want me to eat you, you better go and prepare it now." "Okay, I'm kidding. I don't eat humans, at least not under normal circumstances. My digestive system is still a human's digestive system. I have an extreme rejection for flesh and blood of my own kind." Everyone shuddered at the sight of it. They hurriedly took out the food and watched as Nanier stuffed the food into her mouth with both hands. "Boss, what should we do next? The police outside are probably searching for us like crazy." "Leave, of course. I killed so many police officers. I'm sure the government will send the army to deal with us. I don't want to face a fully armed army. But how do we leave here?" Slap. Just then Nanier threw down a few bloody human faces. Everyone shuddered and looked at Nanier in fear. They didn't understand Nanier's intentions. "Change your face and they won't be able to find us." Chapter 2575. How do we use it? It's a little complicated, but believe me, you'll like the change. Everyone's expression was not good. After all, Nanier's eyes were very evil. "I don't think we need this thing." Perwill's expression was a little fearful. He did not know what Nanier was going to do. But he instinctively felt that what Nanier was going to do was definitely not good. At this moment, the bloody human faces began to wriggle. If one looked closely, they would see many small wriggling tentacles at the edge of the human skin. The process is painful, but you'll also get a new identity. What if I don't want it? "Boss, will you kill me?" Everyone looked at Perwill, waiting for Nanier's answer. "No, but I won't save you either," Nanier said. At most I'll just hide here. The police can't always put me on the wanted list." "The police will find this place soon," Nanier said calmly. Perwill's expression changed. Just then Jeffries picked up a human skin. The human skin was still squirming in his hand. "How do I use this?" "Just put it on your face." After Jeffries put the human skin on his face, the tentacles easily pierced into his skin. "Oh!" Jeffries screamed. "Jeffries, what's wrong?" "No, I'm fine. I'm fine." Jeffries waved his hand. Everyone could see that the skin on that person's face was constantly straightening and smoothing out the originally unflattened skin. Soon Jeffries became a different person. From his body shape to his appearance, even his hair color had changed. Jeffries was originally a short, brown-haired man less than 1.7 meters tall. But now he looked at least 1.8 meters tall. His body was burly and his hair had turned black and yellow. Jeffries? Everyone could not believe that the man in front of them was Jeffries. This was not just a change of face, it was a complete rebirth. Phew, this feels so good. I feel full of power. In the end, everyone chose the human skin. No one sensed anything strange. "Now, no one knows our past identities," Nanier said with satisfaction. Everyone looked at Nan and because she hadn't changed. But at that moment, Nanier's face squirmed and quickly changed into another face. "Where are we going now?" "Let's go to a place that we can enjoy. $300,000 is enough for us to enjoy unprecedented happiness," Nanier said. However, Nanier and her men soon found out. $300,000 was really not a lot. Especially in a place like Los Angeles. $300,000 was only enough for them to spend 3 days in Los Angeles. 3 days later they became paupers. Everyone looked at each other. "Boss, how much money do we have?" "I don't have a penny left. My card has been maxed out." Nanir was also confused. In her memory, $300,000 was a lot. It was a huge sum of money. But why? "It seems that I can only go back to my old profession," Nanir said calmly. "If we're going to rob something this time, we'll rob a big bank. Just one robbery is enough for us to live comfortably for the rest of our lives," Popple said. "But we have no weapons. Last time they flew from New York to Los Angeles, they naturally lost all their weapons. Now they didn't even have a single bullet. Let's rob a gun store first." It was easy for them to rob a gun store. Especially at night for a group of people who could rob a bank. The anti-theft measures of the gun store were really not enough. In fact, they just needed to cut off the power of the gun store. It was almost like a girl who had her legs ripped off. It was very easy for these vicious bandits to obtain a large amount of firearms. And many of them were fully automatic weapons. "Popple, have you found the target?" "Boss, there are too many banks in Los Angeles and almost all of them are heavily guarded. It won't be easy to get them." "Bullshit. Our firepower is so strong. I don't think any bank's defenses can stop our firepower," Nanir said disdainfully. Everyone was speechless. Their firepower was indeed strong. But the key problem was that they couldn't really start a massacre. They were bank robbers, not rebels. "Boss, don't worry. It's not like there aren't any. It's hard to find one in Los Angeles, but the ones slightly further away might not be as heavily guarded as the ones in the city." Popple was very afraid. Their boss wasn't human. "I don't want to wait too long." Not long, not long. At most 3 days." 3 days is too long. "I don't want to pick up food from the trash. I want top-quality beef and exquisite pastries." Nanir was very unhappy. "Forget it. It's useless to count on you. Looks like I'll have to do it myself." "Boss, what are you doing?" "Building an army," Nanir said calmly. "Building an army?" Everyone was dumbfounded. "How? Go to Africa and hire black people?" "No need for that," Nanir said disapprovingly. "Boss, what exactly do we do?" "It's simple," Nanir said casually. "You don't have to do anything." Nanir tapped her temples with 2 fingers. An invisible and untouchable psychic energy spread out. "Huh." Qin Zhao was taking a bath in the lake. Suddenly he felt an unfamiliar spiritual power attack him. This mental power was unfamiliar, but Qin Zhao was very familiar with its methods. Wasn't this the unusual god's method? It had been used for hundreds of years. Didn't the unusual god have any other methods? For example, something more substantial. "Mortal, submit to me. I will give you wealth, power, and eternal life." Qin Zhao suddenly opened his eyes. "Go away." At the same time, Nanir, who was in a corner of Los Angeles, suddenly opened her eyes. Nanir suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. "Boss, what's wrong?" Damn it, there's a terrifying guy here." Nanir remembered this aura. When she escaped from Demon Island, she remembered that the owner of this aura had torn her kind apart one by one. She had also escaped during the chaos. But Nanir was very familiar with this aura. Chapter 2576. Nanir rushed out of the house. The others quickly followed. Although they didn't know what had happened, they felt that something terrible had happened. "Taos, which direction is the wind now?" "Boss, what's wrong? What happened?" "Which direction is the wind now?" "The wind is southeast." Nanir stretched out her hand and felt the breeze. "Then he's in that direction." Nanir's spiritual power spread out, but she couldn't completely control the direction. It could only spread with the wind. Basically, as long as she knew the direction, she would know the general direction of the aura. "Let's leave Los Angeles," Nanir said. "It was too dangerous here. To be precise, that person was too dangerous." "What? We didn't succeed, did we?" "Succeed? If we stay here, we'll only lose our lives." Nanir wasn't afraid of the police. For her, it would just take a little more time to kill them. She wasn't afraid of the army either, as long as it was in a densely populated area. No matter how powerful the army was, they couldn't release it in a densely populated area. Therefore, Nanir had been pursuing the idea of hiding in the city. But that was when there were no strong people of the same level nearby. But now, not only were there people nearby, but they were also nightmarish. If it was someone of the same level or just a little stronger, Nanier felt that she could rely on the wisdom and means she inherited from her predecessors. It was definitely more than enough to deal with them. But the problem now was that the person was not strong at all. Nanier didn't think that the so-called conspiracy and tricks would work on that person. Boss, what happened? We don't have a penny now. Where can we go? Get a car, Nanier said. Now, immediately, right now. But, what? There's someone more terrifying than me here. Everyone looked at each other. They knew who Nanier was. To be precise, they didn't know what kind of terrifying existence Nanier was. But one thing was certain. Nanier was terrifying. Because they had seen the news when they fled from New York to Los Angeles. More than 30 New York police officers were killed by Nanier alone. She was simply a devil from hell. And this was just a little bit of her power. It was definitely not her full strength. But there was someone here who could make her so afraid. This cast a shadow over everyone's hearts. Boss, Los Angeles is big. It shouldn't be that easy to find us. You don't know how terrifying that person is. Several hundred of my clansmen were torn apart by him. He's the true fiend. There was extreme panic in Nanier's eyes. Besides, if he gets close to me, I won't be able to sense him at all. But if I get within a certain range of him, he will sense me. How big do you think Los Angeles is? When I used my spirit magic just now, he already sensed it. Maybe he's searching for me now. Boss. We have guns. With our firepower, we can hold out for 20 minutes even against all the police in Los Angeles. Unless you blow him up with a nuclear warhead, you won't be able to kill him. For him, killing me is no different from killing an ant. Everyone was speechless. Nuclear warhead? What a joke, they couldn't even get their hands on unconventional weapons, let alone nuclear warheads. Everyone was finally convinced by Nan and I. In fact, even if they didn't agree, Nanier would still leave by herself. In any case, she would not stay here. The psychological pressure was too great. They got a car on the street and left the city that night. However, the car ran out of gas on the way. They had no choice but to rob another gas station. In the morning, Nan saw Los Angeles and felt a lot less stressed. Well, don't be afraid when we're out of the city. Let's find a place to eat first. Boss, let's hurry up. It's not too far from Los Angeles. No, I'm hungry, Nan said. Although Nan was possessed by the god of otherworldlings, she was not an ordinary god of otherworldlings. She fed on desire, but she liked human food even more. She also liked everything that humans enjoyed. She gathered Powell and the others because they exuded an aura of desire. They were the most lustful among humans. But she was also dominated by desire. Boss, let's go back. It's not far from Los Angeles. If you don't let me eat, I'll eat you, Nan said coldly. But, we don't have money. Didn't you just rob more than $100 at the gas station? Everyone was helpless and could only compromise. However, their abnormal behavior still attracted the attention of the shop assistant. Fortunately, it was still early. There were no other customers in the store except the shop assistant. They knocked the shop assistant out. This saved them a lot of trouble. Under the urging of the crowd, Nan was only half full. They did not dare to be too ostentatious during the day. After all, it would be quite troublesome if they were chased by the police during the day. Unless they once again escaped into the deep mountains and forests. But soon Nan made trouble again. Nan did not know how to control herself at all. When they passed by a shopping street, Nan wanted to get out of the car and rob the luxury store when she saw the name brands. Finally, they managed to stop Nan from escaping. Not only did Nan have the same desire as a woman, but she also expanded it. She had unlimited and unrestrained desire. Except for Nan they were not interested in luxury goods. At least, they now felt that eating was more valuable than robbing. I don't care. I want to sleep on a branded bag. I want to have a sumptuous meal in front of me. I want to live in the best house. I want the sun, I want the beach. Nan made trouble again. Everyone looked at Nan. They knew that she was difficult to please. But they had money before, so they did not feel that it was unacceptable. But now they had no money at all. $100 was not even enough for a meal. Just when everyone was having a headache, Nan suddenly stopped making trouble. Everyone was surprised. Why did Nan's tantrum end so quickly? That's a bank, Nan said, looking across the road. Yes. Powell nodded. But when he suddenly saw the name of the bank, he suddenly shivered. Boss, that's Citibank. We can't afford to offend them. Chapter 2577. Qin Zhao had a rare free time these 2 days. When he was free, he would go to Cliff and Amber's new kindergarten to check on the progress. Right now, Qin Zhao was returning from the supermarket with the kids. Just then his phone rang. It was Yamala on the phone. Qin, something happened. What can happen? Did someone rob your bank? How do you know? Wait, you didn't do it, did you? Qin Zhao was dumbfounded. He was just talking. If he didn't talk every day, he would feel uncomfortable all over. He didn't expect to run into trouble. You were really robbed? Yes. Wait, you didn't suspect me from the start, did you? What did I do that made you suspect me? I didn't suspect you. You said it yourself. But even if you were robbed, you shouldn't have called me, right? I'm not in charge of this kind of criminal case. It's your gold that's being robbed, said Amira. You're not suspecting me just because of that, right? I said I didn't suspect you, but what? Our bank didn't lose a single cent. Why? Didn't you say that the gold I sold you was robbed? It was indeed robbed, but our bank didn't even have time to hand over the money. The truck you used to transport the gold was still parked at the entrance, and the robber didn't manage to rob our bank of the money. In the process of escaping, he drove away with the truck. Their conversation suddenly fell into silence. The normal transaction process was to transport the gold to the bank. Then the bank would receive it, count it, and transfer the money to complete the final transaction. If the gold was robbed in the bank, it had nothing to do with Qin Zhao. But now the gold was robbed at the door before it even entered the bank. Qin Zhao felt stifled. It wasn't much. It was only 35 tons of gold. It was close to $1. 2 billion. Indeed, it wasn't much for Qin Zhao. But his things had been robbed. How could he be happy? I'll go right now, Qin Zhao said. Okay. Half an hour later, Qin Zhao arrived at the bank. Andrews was waiting for him at the door. Mr. Qin, I'm sorry. Although this had almost nothing to do with him. But he still had to make his stance clear. After all, he was Qin Zhao's representative. He was in charge of the bank's inventory, so he watched from the side. It's none of your business. Take me to Amira first, Qin Zhao said. Soon Qin Zhao saw Amira. What's the specific situation? Look at the surveillance. Qin Zhao had some complaints about Amira. After all, the gold was lost in front of her house. Even if this had nothing to do with her, it didn't stop Qin Zhao from blaming Amira. Amira showed Qin Zhao the surveillance footage. A few people wearing animal masks rushed into the bank. One of the robbers, who was obviously a female, used an unknown technique. The bank's customers and lobby staff suddenly acted like they were possessed and began to help the robbers. But the robbers couldn't open the backstage door. After trying for a minute, the robbers left decisively. Then the customers and employees who were controlled fainted on the ground. Then Amira switched to the outside of the bank. A large truck stopped right in front of the gate. Moreover, the truck stopped just as the robbers entered the bank. Then the robbers didn't care anymore. They kicked the original driver out of the car and drove the truck away in a hurry. Qin Zhao had to admit that he was very unlucky. Very, very unlucky. You didn't find the truck? Qin Zhao asked. With so much gold and such a big truck, it should be very eye-catching. Plus, it's not easy for them to change vehicles in the city. We couldn't find it. We contacted the municipal government and asked for the surveillance footage of all the intersections, but the truck seemed to be invisible. It suddenly disappeared on a straight road. Qin Zhao frowned and disappeared on a straight road. Since the surveillance couldn't find it, it was physical invisibility. In other words, it was true invisibility. If it was only mental hypnosis, it could fool people's eyes, but it couldn't fool the surveillance footage. Qin Zhao took a deep breath. Amira glanced at Qin Zhao. She could see the anger that was about to explode in Qin Zhao's eyes. The truck reached the end of the road. In front of it was a barren desert. Hot wind blew against their faces. Boss, there's someone behind us. I knew. Let's stop here, Nanier said disapprovingly. Her powerful mental strength had already discovered that there were two people's mental strengths in the rear compartment. However, both of them were in a state of extreme panic. Nanier walked to the truck and nodded at Perwell and Sidemar. The two immediately opened the door of the truck. Just then there were loud gunshots. The two guards protecting the gold fired without hesitation. They were trapped in the truck, but there were surveillance cameras in the truck. They knew what was happening outside. Nanier's body was instantly riddled with holes. But she just wouldn't fall. Suddenly, a terrifying light shot out of Nanier's eyes. Ah! With two screams, the two guards fell to the ground, covering their heads. Nanier sneered. Two regular people actually dared to fight her head-on. They really didn't know what death was. Boss, what are you screaming for? Nanier looked at Perwell, annoyed. Powell's voice was trembling as he pointed at the inside of the container. Although the truck was closed, it was bright inside. When Nanier raised her head and looked in the direction of Perwell's finger, she almost couldn't close her mouth. The golden light almost blinded her eyes. Ah! The three people in front of the truck, including Nanier, screamed. The people in front heard the screams and came over. Then they also joined in the screaming. Gold. Endless gold. Nanier finally controlled her emotions. She swallowed her saliva. Gold. That was gold. Even though Nanier was a god of otherworldlings. But she also knew what gold represented. Wealth. It was endless wealth. Ha ha ha. Nanier suddenly laughed wildly. She would retire after this job. That's what she meant. Nanier rushed up, grabbed the 2 gold bricks and kissed them. Boss, there is a lot of gold, but how do we exchange it for cash? This? Nanier narrowed her eyes, her gaze flickering. She attached herself to this body and also obtained all the memories of the previous owner. She knew that the gold could not be used directly as money. Chapter 2578. The gold robbers were in a dilemma about how to turn the gold into cash. Nanier was lost in thought. No one knew what she was thinking. Boss, even if we have unparalleled treasures, we have no way to turn them into cash. What should we do? It's not completely impossible, Nanier said with twinkling eyes. Boss, do you have a way? I happen to know that there are several of our kind nearby. They formed a cult, Nanier said. Close the container and let's go in another direction. Although the truck changed direction, it was getting more and more desolate. After a few hours of driving, the truck arrived at a canyon. Go to the left, Nanier instructed. The truck drove off the highway and onto a dirt road. As the truck drove past, it raised a cloud of dust. The truck drove until it came to a very large dirt mound. Boss, there's no road ahead. Nanier got out of the truck and put her fingers on her temples. Come out, it's a road to the unknown. Just then, a gate appeared on the edge of the dirt mound. It was a rusty bronze gate, exuding a puzzling aura. Nanier raised her arm and shouted, I am Fina Nizmi, and I come as a member of the same clan. The bronze gate slowly opened. It was just a thin surface. But behind the bronze gate was an unreachable abyss. Nanier waved her hand. Drive in. Powell and the others who were driving the truck were panicking at the moment. This was because there was nothing behind the bronze door. There was nothing at all. Were they sure they wouldn't die if they drove in? But under Nanier's urging, Powell still drove the truck in. Then Nanier followed and entered the bronze gate. When Powell turned on the headlights, he found that the truck was parked in a huge and dark cave. Just then, they saw Nanier's feet suddenly leave the ground and she floated up. Hiss, although they knew that their boss was not a human. But when they saw Nanier get rid of the gravity and float up, they still felt a chill. Nanier's body also emitted a faint light. Although it was not very strong, it could illuminate a radius of about 15 meters. Get out, Nanier said. They got out and continued to walk forward. Not long after, they heard heavy breathing in front of them. Suddenly, a huge light source appeared on the wall in front of them. It was a large balloon that looked like it had dried up. There were many lumps of flesh on the shriveled balloon. There were also 2 huge tentacles hanging on the ground. The thing that looked like a deflated balloon in everyone's eyes was actually a living thing. Its body glowed with green light. Everyone was shocked when they saw the true face of this thing. So big. What the hell is this? Aliens? Fina Nizmi, what are you doing here? Hello, Elder Cage. Nanier bowed respectfully and said, I heard that you, Elder Raysar and Elder Kalen Masa have formed the 3 God sect and intend to spread the doctrine among humans. So I want to make a deal with you. Suddenly, Perwil saw another yellow light source on his left. It was also a giant balloon. It didn't look as big as Elder Cage, but it was fuller and rounder. There were countless tentacles all over its body, unlike Elder Cage who only had 2 thick tentacles. Just then, another balloon appeared on the right. It was glowing red and about the same size as the second meatball. It didn't have tentacles, but there were many sarcomas on its body. Fina Nizmi, you? Do you want to make a deal with us? Do you know what you're talking about? The yellow light source rumbled. Fina Nizmi, have you forgotten who we are? Or has your generation forgotten who we are? Nanier's face showed a hint of mockery. But she quickly covered it up. Of course, she didn't forget that these 3 elders could be considered her brothers. Because they were all hatched from eggs laid by their mothers. At the same time, they could be said to be the first rulers of the devil prison. They were hatched from the first batch of eggs laid by their mothers. Then, over the course of 2,000 years, they obtained unparalleled authority in the demon prison, which could not be considered to be very large. Perhaps the demons who raised them let them do as they pleased. They allowed Cage, Quilinmasa, and Raysar, the three otherworldly gods, to devour their own kind. After devouring countless brothers and sisters and growing for 2,000 years, they also grasped unparalleled power. This was something the other otherworldly gods couldn't compare to. It could be said that in the devil prison, other than their mothers, all other otherworldly gods were food to them. Once a otherworldly god that was slightly close to their power appeared, they would devour it. In the devil prison, all the otherworldly gods submitted to their terrifying rule. But in the end they were just dogs raised by the demons. Dogs. Did they need to be respected? Only Nanir didn't need to worry. Because she was the mother, the new generation's mother. If it was in the devil prison, the old mother would directly order the other otherworldly gods to kill her. But the situation now was different. Although she didn't replace the old mother, she escaped from the devil prison. She was also out of the old mother's control. Nanir's power might not be strong. To be precise, she was very weak among the otherworldly gods. But as the mother, she still had a special domain. This domain was hers when she was born. She could be strong, but she could also be weak. Because this domain was only effective against the otherworldly gods. Inviolable. As long as she was in this domain, no otherworldly god could hurt her. They were not even allowed to attack her. Because of this, Nanir dared to meet the three elders of the otherworldly gods. She was the only one who could attack others, and no one could attack her. Don't you want to hear the contents of my deal? Elders. We never trade, we only rob, Quilinmasa said indifferently. Nanir's expression changed slightly, but she still said calmly, "This deal is almost free for you." "Okay, I'll give you a chance to speak," Cage said. "I brought a lot of gold and you will need a lot of money to establish a church. So I want to ask Elder Cage to turn this gold into cash. But you can't remove the domain power within 3 days." Chapter 2579. In Inferno, only Cage, Quilinmasa, and Raysal had mastered the power of the realm. Although they seemed invincible, in fact they were high-level ingredients raised by the demons. Of course they had already escaped. As long as they were not caught by the demons, they would be completely unrestrained. Cage's realm was called the realm of illusion. It could turn real objects into illusions and fake objects into reality. For example, the gold that Nanir brought this time. Cage could turn the gold into dollars, but it could only exist in the realm. Once it was out of the realm, the illusion would be ineffective. Therefore, Cage needed to use his magic to maintain the realm. Nanir's conditions were simple. She would give the gold to Cage, Quilinmasa, and Raysal, and Cage would help them maintain the illusion for 3 days. As long as they deposited the money in the bank, it would be none of Cage's business whether he cancelled the realm or not. Since Cage, Quilinmasa, and Raysal had founded the Three God sect, they would definitely need a lot of money. What they were doing now was basically taking advantage of the situation. They promised the believers endless wealth, power, and strength. In fact, they did not have this ability. At least for the time being, they could not fulfill those promises with their poor assets. To Cage, Nanir's request was as easy as lifting a finger. Therefore, Nanir felt that there should be no obstacles to their deal. At this time, Cage suddenly raised his tentacles and slapped Nanir heavily. However, the tentacles did not hit Nanir, but the side of her. "Fina Nizmi, I want the gold, but I don't agree to your conditions." "What? This is not difficult for you." "Although it's not difficult, I can't use my realm for 3 days." Nanir obviously underestimated Cage's shamelessness and despicability. She thought that she was not afraid of the three gods. However, she completely ignored the fact that the three gods did not care about the terms of the deal. Although they could not attack her, it did not prevent them from leaving the big truck. And Nanir could not stop it at all. Nanir was unhappy that she underestimated the shamelessness of the three gods and overestimated her own ability. She had no bargaining chips in front of them. The so-called bargaining chip was when they had the same level of strength. Although Nanir had the ability to attack them, they couldn't fight back. But the problem was that even if Cage, Quilinmasa, and Raysal, the three otherworldling gods, stood still and let her hit them, she would not be able to hurt them. Therefore this deal was completely untenable. One day Nanir would grow to the point where she could hurt them. He didn't need to be too powerful. He just needed to be able to cause a certain amount of damage. That was when they gave in. However, to wait for that day, it might take a few hundred years or even 1,000 years. But before this, Nanir was not qualified to talk to them at all. You can scram now. Nanier clenched her fists and glared at Cage, Kaylin, Masa and Raisal. It was as if he wanted to remember their faces. Let's go. You can leave but your subordinates can't. We don't have much food left and they can serve as our food reserves. Nanier's eyes were instantly filled with anger. Popper and the others were even more panic-stricken. Do you three old things really intend to shed all pretense of cordiality? Little thing, your threat is meaningless to us. Nanier suddenly put up a spiritual barrier of nearly 10 meters and said to her subordinates behind her, "Hurry up and run." Popper and the others hesitated for a moment, then turned and ran. Kaylin Mass's body emitted a hot red light. The heat was unbearable for Nanier. Although they couldn't directly attack Nanier, it didn't mean that they were completely helpless. Nanier couldn't avoid this kind of area attack. In other words, as long as they didn't directly attack Nanier, it would be fine. But Nanier was still struggling. The scorching heat was almost scorching her skin. She watched as her subordinates ran out of the cave one by one. Nanier glared at the three otherworldly gods with hatred. You'll pay the price. After saying that, Nanier turned and ran. All of a sudden, an iron cage appeared above Nan trapping her in it. Cage looked down at Nanier. Did I allow you to leave? Nanier sneered. Do you think you can stop me from leaving? The next moment, Nanier's body in the cage turned into specks of starlight. Spiritual body. The faces of Cage and the other two otherworldly gods couldn't help but sink. Although Nanier was confident that they couldn't hurt her, she had to be vigilant. So from the beginning she didn't intend to break into the nest of the three god sect alone. Instead, she used a pure spiritual body to transform into her own appearance. If it was someone else's spiritual body, the three powerful otherworldly gods would certainly have discovered it. But the target was Nanier, and their spiritual power couldn't directly scan Nanier. Remember my words, I'll make you pay. Popper and the others ran out of the bronze door and saw Nanier appear on the wall. But at this moment, Nanier's body was full of burn marks, and almost half of her hair was burned. They didn't understand why Nanier suddenly appeared in front of them when she was obviously guarding the rear. Boss, how are you? Nanier was very angry and her face was full of rage. Boss, what should we do now? Revenge. But Popper and the others were full of hesitation. They could see how big the gap between Nanier and the three giant meatballs was. They felt that they couldn't fight against the three giant meatballs with their strength alone. But at this moment, Nanier didn't care about that at all. She just wanted revenge on those three damn bastards. The more Nanier thought about it, the angrier she got. She couldn't calm down at all. But she knew the terrifying strength of the three otherworldly gods. Even if she was given 1,000 years, she wouldn't be a match for them. But her anger at this moment couldn't wait for 1,000 years. She had to take revenge now. Popper and the others all walked in front. They could feel that Nanier's emotions at this moment were like a volcano that was about to erupt, and could be released at any time. They didn't think they could withstand Nanier's outburst. No one dared to persuade Nanier. 9 Heaven's Divine Emperor. Chapter 2580. Suddenly Nanier stopped. Her eyes flickered. Seeing her eyes, everyone felt that she was making a dangerous decision. Yes, she really couldn't beat 3 alien gods. But someone could. The more Nanier thought about it, the more she thought it was a good idea. Let's go back. Qinzhao had been in a bad mood these 2 days. No one would be happy to lose their money. He'd lost $2 billion too. To Qinzhao this wasn't a huge loss. But it still made him feel terrible. Someone had embarrassed him here. Portia glanced at Qinzhao from afar. She didn't know what had happened. However, something bad must have happened for Qinzhao to have such a long face all day. Portia still avoided Qinzhao voluntarily. She didn't want Qinzhao to use her as a tool to vent. Just then Qinzhao's phone rang. Human. A woman's voice came from the phone. Who is it? Qinzhao was confused. Was it a prank? Why did she call him human? I don't like this kind of joke. Qinzhao's tone turned cold. Do you think I'm joking with you? I hope you are. Human, do you think I should be afraid of you just because you say that? You should be. I'm not afraid of you, the woman said. If you're here to provoke me, then you've succeeded. I'm very angry now. Come find me. My subordinates and I have prepared a big gift for you. Qinzhao narrowed his eyes. Challenge? Or a trap? I'll wait for you in the desert north of LA. Normally Qinzhao would think twice before acting. But right now he just wanted to find someone or something to vent his anger on. I'll do as you wish. Hurry, drive in that direction, Nanier urged after hanging up. Boss, what do we do now? Perwell asked as he started the car he'd just stolen. They hadn't done anything else in the past 2 days. They'd only been investigating the phone number of the person Nanier needed. Leave the coordinates, of course. Coordinates? What kind of coordinates? You won't understand even if I tell you. Nanier clearly didn't want to explain the complicated spiritual marking to Perwell. The car sped forward, heading in the direction of the mound. The car was very fast. When they reached the hill, Nanier jumped out of the car and opened the bronze door in the same way. Come on, let's get out of here, Nanier said. Boss, are you sure this will work? It'll definitely work. Nanier wasn't very confident, because it looked too obvious. It was clearly a trap. If it were her, she would not fall for it so easily. But just as they were about to leave, a thick tentacle reached out from the bronze door and grabbed their car. Step on the gas. Since you're here, then don't leave. Just then, a huge blue ball of flesh crawled out of the bronze door. Raisal. Nanier picked up the gun and fired at Raisal, who was standing in front of the windshield. Although the spear could not hurt Raisal, it could still cause him pain. But in pain, Raisal swung his tentacles and sent their car flying. Fina Nizmi, you still haven't learned your lesson. Raisal's body floated up gently and approached Nanier and Perwell's car. Raisal's attack just now had made the two of them suffer quite a bit. Especially Perwell, whose head was already bleeding. Nanier didn't have any injuries. But the car's tumbling made her dizzy. The car was almost the size of a toy car in front of Raisal. Seeing this, Raisal's tentacles were raised high. Seeing this, Perwell's face turned pale with fright. He didn't know if Nanier would die from Raisal's tentacle whip, but he would definitely die. Just when Perwell thought he was going to die, a gust of air whizzed past the car. Then Raisal's huge body was smashed into the mound of earth behind it. Startled, Perwell turned to look at Nanier next to him. Nanier crossed her arms in front of her chest and stared at the rearview mirror. Her body was trembling violently. She seemed to have seen something horrifying, or maybe someone. Popper turned his head to look behind him and saw a vague silhouette slowly walking towards them. Qinzhao walked forward step by step. Spheres kept forming around him. These balls were like dark planets. Each weighed 1,000,000 tons. This was the result of his training these days. It wasn't the best result he'd expected. But it was already quite horrifying. After forming 5 black balls, the number stopped increasing. Qinzhao had already walked to the car. He glanced indifferently at Nanier and Perwell in the car. Just then Raisal flew out of the huge hole he'd created. I'm going to kill you. Raisal roared from his soul. Terrifying spiritual waves exploded from his body. Qinzhao lifted his right arm and pointed at Raisal. 5 black balls shot out at the same time. Bang, 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 bang. With unstoppable speed and terrifying weight, the black balls pierced through Raisal's ball-like body with a single horizontal shot. 5 holes were left in one go. The black balls didn't stop there. They kept shooting back and forth again and again. In just a dozen seconds, Raisal was riddled with holes. However, the otherworldly god wasn't so easy to kill. Their bodies were just extensions of their spiritual power, which came from their core hearts. As long as their hearts weren't destroyed, they could regenerate endlessly. As expected, in less than a dozen seconds, Raisal's body reformed again. But now he didn't want to fight anymore. Because he'd recognized the human in front of him. Qinzhao pointed again and the 5 black balls combined into one. Bang, 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 bang. After 5 loud bangs, a 10,000,000-ton black ball was formed. This was the limit of what Qinzhao could do with his domain. Moreover, it was difficult to even control the trajectory of a 10,000,000-ton black ball. Controlling 5 2,000,000-ton black balls and 1 10,000,000-ton black ball were 2 completely different things. Qinzhao had the experience of controlling thousands of swords before, so controlling 5 black balls at the same time wasn't a problem at all. But controlling a 10,000,000-ton black ball was a matter of pure strength. He couldn't lift it up. So Qinzhao fused the black ball above Raisal's head. Then, under the effect of gravity, it smashed into Raisal's body. Poof! Raisal's body deflated like a deflated balloon. Chapter 2581. Nanier already knew how terrifying Qinzhao was. But Perwell didn't know. He didn't know what was going on either. There was a whooshing sound in the air. Then Rezhal shriveled up as if he'd been punched hundreds of times. Qinzhao glanced at the shriveled Rezhal and then at the bronze door. Qinzhao walked toward the bronze door. Nanier looked at Qinzhao's back. After Qinzhao entered the bronze door, Nanier jumped out of the car. She charged at Rezhal. Reshal was suppressed by a black ball that didn't look very big. This also made it impossible for him to move. Every time he tried to recover, it would be destroyed instantly. His core was exposed to the air too. It couldn't cover his flesh at all. Nanier looked at the bronze door again. It seemed like she was panicking too. But when she looked at Reshal again, her eyes were filled with greed. Fina Nisme. Save me. Save me. Reshal couldn't move at all. He could only use his weak spiritual power to try to ask Nanier for help. Okay, I'm coming to save you. Nanier walked forward step by step. Suddenly, Nanier pounced at Reshal's core. His core was several meters in diameter. Nanier's palms pressed firmly against the core. Her 10 fingers turned into tendrils and started piercing into the core. Fina Nisme. What are you doing? Stop. Stop. Reshal screamed in terror. But he couldn't move. His body was firmly suppressed by the black ball. Reshal, you can't be saved anymore. That person is here. Do you think you can escape? As Nanier spoke, her hands didn't stop. She was still devouring Reshal's core. How dare you? I dare. Nanier replied. Among the otherworldly gods, it was always the strong devouring the weak. There was almost no such thing as the weak devouring the strong. Powerful spiritual power entered Nanier's body. There was no rejection at all. It was as if she'd returned to her origin. Reshal's heart became more and more shriveled. But Nanier didn't change at all. Qin Zhao entered the bronze door. The first thing he saw was the big truck. His expressionless face suddenly turned cold. 2 powerful waves of spiritual power rushed out of the darkness. It rushed toward Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao was no stranger to this type of spiritual power. At this moment, 2 beams of light appeared in the depths. One was completely red like a burning fireball. The other one was glowing with green light. It's that person. He's here. Cage and Quillen Masa were panicking. Never in their wildest dreams did they expect to meet Qin Zhao here. Fight it out with him. If they could, they would definitely leave this place without looking back. But there was nowhere else to run. Only by putting their lives on the line could they have a glimmer of hope. However, Qin Zhao quickly extinguished their hopes. In just 20 seconds, Cage and Quillen Masa's hearts were dug out. Qin Zhao's bad mood from the past 2 days was suddenly lifted. How dare you steal my things? He was tired of living. Qin Zhao put the truck and the 2 hearts away. When he went out, he found that Nanier and Pol Will had already escaped. Drive faster, Nan and I urged. Even without Nan and I's urging, Pol Will had already accelerated to the maximum. But just then there was a loud bang in front, kicking up a cloud of dust. Pol Will hurriedly stepped on the brakes. Then the 2 people in the car saw Qin Zhao walk out of the dust. Get out, Qin Zhao ordered. Get out, Nan and said to Pol Will. At the same time she got out of the car. Escape? It was impossible to run away from Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao just stood there and stared at Nan and without saying a word. Right now Nan and felt her scalp go numb under Qin Zhao's gaze. Suddenly she regretted her earlier recklessness. She'd actually done this to take revenge on Cage, Quillen Masa and Reshal. She'd actually attracted this terrifying human. She was practically asking for death. At this moment, Powell also felt his blood run cold. There was a gun hidden behind his back. Perhaps the gun could give him a sliver of security. It's you. No, it's not me. Nan and waved her hands in fear. Hearing Nan and voice, Qin Zhao immediately recognized that she was the one who'd provoked him. I've seen the surveillance footage of you robbing my gold. I also remember your voice, Qin Zhao said coldly. Qin Zhao said coldly, also you devoured my spoils of war without my permission. Nan and face paled. She almost couldn't help but reveal her true form. But she knew very well that even if she revealed her true form, she wouldn't be able to defeat this human before her. That day she'd personally witnessed how Qin Zhao had slaughtered her kind. Gold. The gold she'd robbed was his? Damn. Why wasn't his name carved on the gold? I can explain. Nan and was trembling all over. Okay, I'll give you one chance to explain. Qin Zhao also wanted to know the reason. He'd originally thought that a dangerous trap awaited him. But there was nothing. While Qin Zhao felt lucky, he was also a little disappointed. Just now, Qin Zhao hadn't attacked personally. He'd been using the black ball created by the little universe to attack. He just didn't know what kind of danger awaited him. He and I were both controlled by Elder Cage, Quillen Masa, and Elder Rysel. We were forced to rob the bank, Nan and I said. I didn't know that the gold was yours at all. We were just enslaved by the 3 elders. But after we succeeded, the 3 elders wanted to kill us. One of the elders told us that they wanted to take revenge on you for slaughtering us, our kind on Demon Island. But to prevent the news from leaking, they wanted to kill us small fries. Then how did you know my contact number? Before we took action, we had already secretly investigated your phone number. We had a premonition that the three elders might kill us, so we made preparations in advance. I didn't expect that our premonition would come true in the end. Qin Zhao rubbed his chin, thinking about the cause and effect. No. Qin Zhao suddenly shouted. I've seen your surveillance footage. You weren't going for the gold at all. Stealing my car carrying the gold was an accident. It wasn't an accident. We thought that the gold was in the bank, but the security door of the bank refused to let us in, so we planned to give up temporarily. But we happened to see the car carrying the gold at the door, so we took advantage of the situation and drove away. Divine King of the Nine Heavens. Chapter 2582. Okay, that's enough explanation. Qin Zhao waved his hand. He couldn't tell if Nanier was telling the truth or not. But some things didn't need to be too calculative. One explanation was enough. Then, can I go now? Go. Did I say I'd let you go? You, otherworldly god. Qin Zhao looked at Nanier. Why do you think I'd let a otherworldly god go? You didn't keep your promise. Promise? You were the one who tried to use depravity magic on me that night, right? Qin Zhao looked at Nanier. I remember your spiritual aura. Don't deny it. Nanier's expression froze. She'd wanted to get some servants. But she'd run into a ghost when she left. And now she'd come to him voluntarily. Nanier saw a black ball condense beside Qin Zhao. Nanier gulped. Pole Will suddenly pulled out his gun and pointed it at Qin Zhao, shouting, "Don't move." Qin Zhao smiled. Recently, there weren't many people who threatened him with guns anymore. Wait, Nanier said, raising her hands. Sir, we can talk. Talk about what? Who are you to talk to me? I can help you find otherworldly gods. They're hiding in every corner of the human world. Even if you stand before some of them, you might not be able to find them. Qin Zhao shook his head. I don't care about that. As long as they don't appear before me, I won't care. Hearing this, Nanier felt that she'd asked for a big death again. I can work for you, Nanier said. Then what do you think you can do for me? Sir, you're raising otherworldly gods, right? So what? I know how to raise better otherworldly gods. You're an otherworldly god yourself. Don't you hate it? Why would I hate it? We raise our own kind too. It's very common for us to raise otherworldly gods. Qin Zhao propped up his chin with one hand and stared at Nanier. You know how to raise better otherworldly gods? Yes, I do. Is this technique unique to you? Or do all otherworldly gods know? Only I know. What's so special about you? Since Nanier had mastered a technique that no one else of her kind had. Then Qin Zhao had to suspect Nanier's identity. It's not that there's anything special about me. It's just that I've devoured Rysar, the first elder of the otherworld god you killed just now. I've extracted information about this technique from his memory fragments. Then how did he master this technology? I don't know about his ears. Nanier said helplessly, the memory I extracted from him is not complete. Then what are the specific effects of your rearing methods? I can make the unusual god mature faster, and I can nurture elite unusual gods, or even top unusual gods. Only in terms of power? Qin Zhao frowned. What he needed were otherworldly gods to be raised as livestock. It's not meant to be used in battle. Therefore, power strengthening was meaningless to Qin Zhao. The flesh of an elite unusual god can increase the user's spiritual power and vitality by a small amount. If eaten for a long time, the effect will be even more obvious. The three elders have used this method to rule fiend purgatory for a long time. Because they've secretly nurtured powerful unusual gods for themselves to devour, their power is far greater than normal unusual gods. They've even evolved their own territories. Then, if I let you manage fiend purgatory, how long will it take for you to give me results? 5 years, Nanier said. That's too long. 3 years. Nanier quickly added, the larvae in devil prison can also be used, but they can't achieve the best effect. Only the larvae that are cultivated from the moment they hatch are the best targets to be cultivated. Then the quality of the larvae can be gradually improved, and the maturity period can be shortened from 50 years to 20 years. Qin Zhao thought for a while. Sure, you have to give me results in 3 years. Sir, can I make my request? Tell me. I need at least 2 months of vacation every year and I need payment. Vacation? Sure, what else do you need? First, I need at least 3 adult unusual gods as my food every year. At the same time, I need payment from humans and a high salary. How much do you think I'll pay you a year? $5 million. Qin Zhao shook his head. You're not worth this price before you give me any results. Then 2 million, at least 2 million. Nan Nir thought for a moment and lowered her request. Qin Zhao rubbed his chin and thought. Nan Nir added, I have 5 subordinates. I need to pay them. Sure, for 3 years I'll give you 2 million a year. After 3 years I'll raise your pay based on your results or kill you. When Nan Nir heard Qin Zhao say the word kill, she had an unnatural expression. Pack up. I'll send you and your people back to Demon Island in 2 days. Qin Zhao was about to leave when he suddenly remembered something. Oh, don't think about running. I've already left a mark on you. Nan Nir's smile was a bit stiff. Of course I'm happy to work for you, my master. After I became your servant, I never thought about running. How could Qin Zhao believe the words of an unusual god? Bang. Qin Zhao flew away. Perwil was so scared that he fell on his butt. Only now did he feel a wave of fear. Is that guy Superman? Maybe he has superhuman strength, but his personality is completely different. In terms of evil, he's definitely scarier than us unusual gods. Qin Zhao didn't know what Nan Nir thought of him, but he didn't care either. He cared more about his control of the realm. It seemed strong, but it didn't reach Qin Zhao's expected level. In fact, it was far from what he'd expected. It seemed like he needed more time to cultivate. After returning home, Qin Zhao entered the river map directly. He started cultivating again. To be honest, without the river map, Qin Zhao couldn't have reached his current level. Qin Zhao had never been a genius. Even though he'd had some opportunities, he was still far from a real genius. All Qin Zhao had was time. Even if he used a small portion of it to cultivate, he could still reach his current level. Chapter 2583. Qin Zhao's small world was at least 10 times stronger than before. However, Qin Zhao's goal was still far from the small world. The size of the small world had also increased, but not by much. After each refinement, it didn't even increase by half a meter. Qin Zhao's real gain was that the heavenly patterns in the small world seemed to be alive. The Nirvana flame activated the heavenly patterns. It was like a dead person being reborn. Qin Zhao, Bifla, Zhang Tianyi, and 23rd Blood Mary would discuss their cultivation progress and insights every day. Old Zhang, I think you guys have to cultivate the Nirvana flame too. Qin Zhao was the only one who had started cultivating the small world. Therefore he was the one who had the most right to speak. Zhang Tianyi's cultivation was second only to Qin Zhao. He was one heaven's test away from Qin Zhao. I have my ways. My Starfire Ember might not be weaker than your Nirvana flame. It's not about power. When I refined the small world recently, I realized that the heavenly patterns seem to be alive. He's alive. Everyone's hearts jolted. What do you mean? Because they hadn't experienced it themselves, they didn't really understand the concept of being alive. Look at a withered tree and a towering tree full of life. That's the difference, Qin Zhao said. Once the heavenly pattern is activated, even if you don't do anything, it'll still grow gradually. Not only that, but the heavenly pattern also produces life force. It's not much, but it can increase one's lifespan by at least a quarter. Bifla, Zhang Tianyi, and 23rd Blood Mary were all very sensitive to life force and lifespan. 23rd Blood Mary didn't need to say much. She was going to die this year. If Qin Zhao hadn't given her a mixed yuan stone, she probably wouldn't even have the chance to get out of bed. Zhang Tianyi's situation was slightly better than 23rd Blood Mary's. However, it was only slightly better. He was already more than 120 years old. He wasn't as old as 23rd Blood Mary, who didn't even dare to fight others. But he didn't dare to squander life force carelessly now. Under normal circumstances, life force was consumed every day. A person's body would produce a certain amount of life force every once in a while. The younger a person was, the more life force they would produce. In fact, the supply exceeded the demand, and the life force was either absorbed or passed away naturally. Why did experts at their level live longer than ordinary people? It was because they knew how to absorb life force. Once they started fighting, they would not only consume their mana but also their vitality. However, as long as they didn't overuse it, it wouldn't affect them too much. But once the intensity of the battle exceeded expectations, therefore they had to use the life force of their origin. This way it would consume a lot of energy. Why would burning one's life force increase one's combat power and recover one's mana quickly? It was because of the overdraft of life force. Vitality was a higher level of energy than magic power. Naturally, it could be exchanged for more power. But normal people wouldn't use their life force to exchange for power. Zhang Tianyi hadn't started consuming his life essence yet. But it was about time. When his body no longer produced life force, it was time for him to use the origin of life. The 23rd Blood Mary, on the other hand, had exhausted all of her life force. Without the replenishment of the primordial stone, she would probably die in less than half a year. As for Bifla, what was the purpose of his possession? Wasn't it just prolonging his life? No one liked the process. Bifla's possession wasn't smooth either. It could be said that he was surrounded by danger every time. It was a very painful thing. If Qin Zhao could make the small world produce life force, then it would be great news for the three of them. Of course, it would also give them more motivation. If that's the case, it's understandable. It's also recorded in the ancient books of our sect, Zhang Tianyi said. Zhang Tianyi said, there's a passage in the records of ancient Yuan, using the number of a radius to obtain the qi of 10,000 years. Now that I've heard Qin Zhao say this, I finally understand the meaning of this sentence. The number of a radius refers to our small world. However, the records of ancient Yuan was written by an unknown ancient genius. I think this person's cultivation probably far exceeds ours. This also caused the life force that his small world can condense to be incomparably huge. As long as it can match the life force that we consume, it's almost equivalent to an infinite life. Everyone was shocked. Infinite life force. It didn't seem so unreachable. Qin Zhao thought about it and said, from this perspective, it's true that the higher the cultivation, the more perfect the small world is and the more life force it can produce. But after cultivating for a few days, I'm afraid it's still out of my reach. Although the small world is becoming more and more perfect and its diameter has expanded, the amount of life force produced hasn't increased much. This means that this path is much more difficult than we imagined. It's almost impossible to obtain 10,000 years of life or even immortality. Qin Zhao's thoughts were much deeper than theirs. After all, he had experienced it himself. Right now, they were just guessing based on their own experience. He also borrowed the river diagram, even though he had only started cultivating for a few days. Although he had only started cultivating for a few days, he had actually been cultivating in the river map for many years. If the life force produced by the small world and the actual life force consumed could reach a true 1:1 ratio, this meant that he could live as long as the world and shine as bright as the sun and moon. But in reality, the ratio was 0:1, and after cultivating for so long, the life force produced by the small world was about 0.23. In other words, if there were no other accidents, Qin Zhao had obtained an additional 23% of his remaining life force. For the 23rd generation Blood Mary, Zhang Tianyi, and Bifla, if they cultivated to Qin Zhao's current level, the effect would be the same or close to it. Moreover, the shorter the time they had left, the worse the effect would be. If one of them was going to die tomorrow, they might not even get an additional 6 hours of life force. Moreover, Qin Zhao could feel that the more he cultivated, the less life force was produced. In the beginning, the increase was quite obvious, but the more he cultivated, the less the increase. Moreover, Qin Zhao believed that as his small world was gradually perfected, it might reach an upper limit. This was why Qin Zhao said that true immortality was just an unreachable dream. To the four of them, it seemed like they were already very close, but it was still unreachable. Chapter 2584. Everyone was in a good mood. They chatted from night to the next morning. Just then, Feilai opened her eyes in a daze. Darling, I want to soak in the lake for a while. I want to float down. Ever since Qin Zhao had carried Feilai with his little world last time, she'd liked this feeling. For example, at this time every day, in Feilai's words, a bath was the fastest way to wake up. With a thought, Feilai floated up. Even the blanket on her floated up. Go. Qin Zhao flicked his finger and Feilai was tossed out. Qin Zhao prepared a toothbrush and toothpaste for her. After a while, Feilai came back dripping wet. Phew. I'm much more awake now. Feilai wiped the water from her hair. Qin, help me dry my hair. Qin Zhao snapped his fingers again. Instantly, Feilai felt the wind of a level 15 typhoon. Her face was already deformed. To be honest, no one could maintain their beauty in such wind, not even Feilai. Raise the temperature. Too much cold wind will make my skin dry. Qin Zhao rolled his eyes. Feilai was full of water at home and at work. Would she be afraid of dehydration? Nevertheless, Qin Zhao still used the Nirvana flame and the heavenly pattern to raise the temperature by a few degrees. Okay, let's go eat breakfast. When Qin Zhao and Fei Lai went downstairs, the kids who had to go to school had already woken up and were eating breakfast. Underlings were running in and out, preparing breakfast for everyone. Everyone was used to the underling service. In fact, they might not be used to it without the underling service. Uncle, the school plans to organize an off-campus camping trip. Everyone has to pay $60. Didi La looked at Qin Zhao. The other kids also looked at Qin Zhao. When? Qin Zhao asked. Next Monday and Tuesday. 2 days in total. Then use this time to collect horse and cow dung from the field. $1 per kilogram, Qin Zhao said. Don't let the underlings help. Qin Zhao had never given cash to his kids. What he bought for them didn't count. But if they needed money themselves or wanted to buy something outside of the plan, then Qin Zhao would ask them to earn the money themselves. Of course, Fei Lai would be the one in charge. Qin Zhao also thought this was a good plan. Okay. Didira and the others weren't pampered children. They agreed without hesitation. If the cow dung was processed into fertilizer, it would only cost around $10 per ton. But the real meaning of this matter was never those few dollars. Honey, do you have any plans for today? No, Qin Zhao said. After sending the kids to school, I'll ask Felwood to come over. What's the matter? No, Coco recently released a new bag and I'm planning to buy it. Okay, I'll book it for you. When Fei Lai went out, Portia was there too. Qin Zhao had Portia look after the house while he sent the kids to school. Felwood, are you free now? Yes, Mr. Qin. Where do you need me to go? Come to my house. Yes, by Mirror Lake. Okay, please wait a moment. Half an hour later, Felwood Cisco arrived. Hello, Mr. Qin. Yes, sit. Qin Zhao nodded. How's the construction of my private airport going? It's going well, Felwood Cisco said. It should be ready in the fall. Sure, Qin Zhao said. Don't delay the construction. Also, I called you here for something else. Please go ahead. Do you remember that I told you last year that I have a big project on hand? Felwood Cisco perked up. Of course he remembered. For this, he'd hired many more workers. However, there was no news from Qin Zhao. His company was already feeling a little pressured from paying the salaries of these workers. Recently, he was even planning to fire some of them. The project has been confirmed. The first investment should be $10 billion, Qin Zhao said. I've already started raising funds, but there's no public bidding yet. I'm not the only one involved in this project. There are a few major shareholders too, so I need you to give me a clear answer. How much can you take? Felwood Cisco's jaw dropped. He stared at Qin Zhao in shock. His eyes were filled with disbelief. $10 billion. This amount of money was enough to build a small city. What project was Qin Zhao talking about? Mr. Qin, can you tell me the details of the project? Do you know about Nanchi Island? Qin Zhao asked. Felwood Cisco's eyes widened again. Of course he knew. How could he not? There were already all sorts of rumors about Mystical Island in the market. One of them was that the owner of Mystical Island was going to develop it as a tourist island. As a member of the construction industry, Felwood Cisco had been asking around for information. He wanted to see if he could get some benefits. However, basically everyone else knew about the information he got. He couldn't even find the person in charge. He couldn't even get some benefits. But he didn't expect that. Qin Zhao was the owner of Mystical Island. Moreover, he couldn't just get some benefits. A pot was placed before him. There were a few pieces of meat and a few mouthfuls of soup. It was all up to him. This is the plan for the first phase of the project. Take a look. Felwood Cisco felt like he was suffocating. There were dozens of big and small projects. The largest projects were all over $500 million. One of the biggest projects was the reclamation project and a medium-sized airport. The current budget was $5 billion. Moreover, this was only the first phase of the airport. The second phase would be expanded. At this moment, Felwood really wanted to slap himself. Why didn't he learn from his mistakes? Qin Zhao had already reminded him a year ago. However, he was still cautious. Now he was in a very awkward position. Mr. Qin, I think I can take on the shopping street and airport projects, Felwood said. Give me your schedule, budget, and plan. Then contact my lawyer, the person in charge of the project. You know him too, Ms. Alex? Okay, I'll give you a plan as soon as possible. Felwood, we're old acquaintances, but I hope you can give me a satisfactory construction plan for this project. Otherwise, even with our relationship, I can't give the project to you. I understand. I know. Chapter 2585. When Felwood Cisco left, his mind was still muddled. He didn't know how he'd return to the company. But he woke up very quickly. This wasn't the time to joke around. Every minute he was distracted was a minute of wasted time. His biggest advantage now was that he knew Qin Zhao. Plus, before the bidding for this super project was open, he didn't have any competitors. This meant that as long as he could come up with a design that could make Qin Zhao and the shareholders' eyes light up, he had a high chance of getting the project. But he really didn't have any famous designers. Designers who could win international awards couldn't do it just because they were suddenly inspired. In fact, being able to win an award already proved that they were indeed better than others. Felwood thought for a while and decided to hire a few more famous designers. It wasn't the time to save money. If he saved money now, he might lose this super project. Felwood sighed again. A big shot would always be a big shot. Felwood had thought that he had a rough understanding of Qin Zhao's wealth. But now he realized that he'd still underestimated Qin Zhao's wealth. Especially this project. How could a normal person afford it? Nanier brought her subordinates to Qin Zhao's house. Including Nanier. When she saw Qin Zhao's manner, she was still shocked. Mr. Qin? Nanier gulped. Qin Zhao waved his hand. Call me boss from now on. Qin Zhao glanced at the people behind Nanier. Are they your subordinates? Apart from Perwert, the others all seemed rather unruly. When Qin Zhao glanced over, they even glared back at him. It was as if they were saying, "What are you looking at? Are you looking for a beating?" Qin Zhao's face suddenly turned fierce. In an instant, the four people flew back at the same time. They felt like they'd been punched in the chest. They flew out, but Qin Zhao lifted them up and pulled them back to their original positions. When you face me in the future, please show fear. Do you hear me? Nanier and Polwell didn't even dare to fart. When they'd gone back to talk to Sedmer and the others, they'd simply said that she'd found a boss for them. They'd just follow this boss. They'd thought that he was just an ordinary boss. And then, he was taught a lesson. If you hear me, please answer me. If you still don't understand, then I think I need to change a group of employees. Boss, they can't speak when you choke them. Qin Zhao finally loosened his control over them. However, Sedmar and the others were already scared out of their wits. Do you understand now? Understood. Be good. Qin Zhao nodded and looked up at Nanier. Get ready. I'll arrange a ship for you to go out in 3 days. Also, if anyone dares to make trouble for me, you'd better throw them into the sea early. If you wait for me, I'll throw you into the sea to feed the sharks. Also, there's some money in this card. You can buy whatever you want for the next 3 days. In the future, you won't have the chance to enjoy yourself for most of the year, so I suggest you buy some things to pass the time on the island. Boss, who is that person? It's better if you don't know. But boss, we've already become his subordinates. What's there to hide? If you want to know who he is, you must first understand who I am. More accurately, what I am. Everyone swallowed their saliva, and their eyes were filled with panic. They already knew that Nanier wasn't human. However, after daily contact, they felt that Nanier was a bit difficult to please. But at least they were birds of a feather. So it wasn't unacceptable. I'm not human. Everyone responded to Nanier with a look that said, we already knew it. If we really have to count, I should be a god. God. Everyone was dumbfounded. This abominable fellow was a god? This was completely different from the gods in their minds. They really couldn't accept a god like this. Of course, in your understanding, I'm an evil god, Nanier said. Of course, I'm far from as powerful as you think. The 3 you saw that day are my kind. They're relatively powerful evil gods. They can use spiritual magic to cause people to fall into deep fear and make them sink into the illusions they create. Boss, then you're not good people. I don't need to make you fall. I like your desire. Your desire is my best food. But whether it's me or the 3 old guys, we're all meat raised by others. Not long ago, we were all enslaved by a terrible demon named Leviathan Abaran Tajimas. His strength is beyond your understanding. Then explain it in words we can understand. 4 months ago, a powerful American fleet attacked Leviathan Abhan Tegmis, but the battle only lasted for an hour. The entire fleet, together with thousands of American soldiers, sank into the sea. The flesh and blood of the soldiers were thrown down and became our food. Everyone swallowed, their eyes full of fear. Then that man came. Nanier's voice trembled with fear. He killed thousands of demons. Tajimis's island was almost razed to the ground by him. Tajimis begged for mercy in front of him, but he turned a blind eye to Tajimis's pleas and took everything away from him. We were deliberately released by Tajimis to stop him, but That horrible human crushed us like bugs. You can't imagine how horrible that human is. He's more like a demon than a demon. Everyone was trembling with fear. I escaped during the chaos. I thought I would never meet him again, but... Nanier felt a little regretful at the moment. To be honest, I really admire you. Nanier glanced at Sadmar and the others. I thought you should be smart enough to understand the situation, but you actually dared to stare at that man. Everyone wanted to cry but had no tears. Their thoughts were completely opposite of Nanier's. They felt that Nanier had not warned them. Then it was certainly not a big shot. Chapter 2586. Get on the boat. We won't wait for you if you're late. Simenta looked at the people who were late. Her temper was still the same. Of course, her attitude depended on who she was talking to and her mood. For example, right now, she was in a bad mood. Very, very bad. This time she had to take the route she hated the most. Demon Island. Ever since the trip to Demon Island, Simenta had always avoided this place. But not long ago she received a call from Chen Zhao. He wanted her to help him send a few people to Demon Island. She'd refused. But Chen Zhao told her that if she refused, her boat wouldn't even be able to leave the open sea. Accidents would happen. Simenta cursed in her heart. Then she obediently accepted the $1 million labor fee. It wasn't a lot, but it wasn't a small amount either. It was enough for her to go to Demon Island once and still have some leftover money. She had a deep impression of Chen Zhao. If possible, she hoped that Chen Zhao would never think of her. Unfortunately, as long as she was on the sea, she would never be able to get rid of Chen Zhao. Nanier stared at Simenta with a dark expression. Do you know who you're saying this to? Nanier said coldly. Her voice was filled with murderous intent. Don't scare me. I know who you are, Simenta said indifferently. If you dare to attack me, you better think about the consequences. Nanier could tell that Simenta was using Chen Zhao to threaten her. But she really couldn't ignore this threat. Call a few people to help me move my things, Nanier said. 3 days ago, Chen Zhao had given them a card. They thought that the card didn't have much money. In the beginning they spent it carefully. But soon they realized that in 3 days, even if they bathed in champagne and ate delicacies, they still couldn't spend all the money in the card. Then they started their shopping spree. Of course they also listened to Chen Zhao. He'd prepared countless entertainment items for them for the next year. Basically, the luggage would be their future entertainment. They couldn't help it. There really wasn't much entertainment on Demon Island. That's not in my service. These are all our boss's things, Nanier said. Simenta was speechless. She didn't have the courage to say no. Vestana, I'm leaving. Yanghua looked at Vestana, who was now completely dispirited. In reality, Yanghua was even more depressed than her. He could finally understand what his grandmaster had been saying. You are not comparable to him. What does this sentence mean? Are you leaving too? Vestana's breath reeked of alcohol the moment she opened her mouth. But her mind was still clear. Mr. Torti has told you about the power that Chin showed on Demon Island, right? Yanghua stared at Vestana. You can't win. That's what you think. I don't accept it. Vestana sounded resentful. During this expedition to Bermuda, all of her men were killed on Devil Island, including her most trusted Brits. This was the time when she needed help, but Yanghua chose to leave her at this time. How could she not feel resentful? As expected, Toddy Belster was trustworthy. At least he didn't betray her. Yanghua had an impulse in his mind. He wanted to stay and continue helping Vestana. But Akra Buman, his little dragon girl, didn't agree. His wife had risked her life to go to Demon Island for him. Now it was time for him to pay his debt. He had to listen to Akra Buman and return to Dragon Tiger Mountain. It was too dangerous here. He didn't know if Chen Zhao would harm him if he knew he was still here. He wasn't afraid of Chen Zhao. But he couldn't guarantee that Chen Zhao wouldn't hurt Akra Buman. If Chen Zhao really did something to them, he couldn't protect his wife at all. So he had to leave with her. You can leave now, Vestana said coldly. Oh, you're not resigning. I'm firing you. Yanghua sighed. If you think this can keep some dignity, I'll respect your decision. With that, Yanghua turned and left. Just then Vestana spoke again. Yang, if you still care about our past relationship, please give me the latter part of that secret technique. Yanghua hesitated. He turned and looked at Vestana. Vestana, even if you complete the technique, it'll be difficult for you to defeat him. Didn't Master Toddy tell you? That man is terrifying. He did, but I don't want to still be that weak, ordinary person. Alright, this is what you need. Remember, you won't be able to defeat him with this mystic art alone. Yanghua tossed the Taoist art book in front of Vestana and strode away. Just then Toddy Belster appeared before Yanghua. Master Toddy. Are you leaving? Toddy Belster asked. Yes, Master Toddy. If you can please persuade Vestana. You know that she's not facing an enemy at all. She's facing despair. I know. Toddy nodded. Both of them sighed at the same time. They moved away from each other and headed in different directions. Toddy Belster walked into Vestana's office. The office was filled with empty wine bottles. The strong smell of alcohol permeated the air. Vestana sat on the desk. There was a wine bottle beside her. Master Toddy, I hope you're not here to say goodbye. Vestana was very depressed. Of course not. Toddy smiled faintly. At least it's not in my consideration for now. But if you continue to be so depressed, I'll have to consider leaving. Vestana slowly raised her head. Then Master Toddy, what's your plan? First, I'll recruit people, Toddy said. I'll rebuild the psionic team. That's right. I'll build a stronger team. Vestana said, gritting her teeth. No, I'll recruit stronger spiritualists from all over the world. They won't be limited to the small North American spiritual world. A strange light flashed in Toddy Belster's eyes. He was the nail that Qin Zhao had left behind. After the turmoil in the psionic team, he didn't need to be a mercenary anymore. He would become the second in command of the psionic team. He could stand in the light. He could even completely control the psionic team. On the surface he was Qin Zhao's enemy, but in reality he would secretly cooperate with Qin Zhao. Chapter 2587. At the airport. Yanghua didn't expect the person to be Qin Zhao. I thought you would stay. Akrabumon tugged at his man. Yanghua took a deep breath and looked at Qin Zhao. Are you here to mock me? You think I'm here to mock you? Isn't it? Qin Zhao looked at Yanghua. He didn't answer his question directly, but his lips curled into a smile. Yanghua sighed. After a while he said, let Vestana go. Yanghua knew that Vestana would not give up so easily. He also knew that Vestana couldn't defeat Qin Zhao. Even though he had reminded Vestana many times, she still couldn't help it. But Vestana still felt that she had a chance. She still had a chance to defeat him. This was because she didn't have a clear idea of Qin Zhao's strength. It was a terrifying thought. It's very simple. As long as she gives up those foolish thoughts, I won't touch a single hair on her head. Yanghua silently turned his head and left. If he could persuade Vestana, that is, then he wouldn't have to waste his breath on Qin Zhao. Just because he couldn't convince Vestana. That was why he wanted to get an acceptable answer from Qin Zhao. Unfortunately, Qin Zhao did not do as he wished. Mara and Sindora were going to school today. They were not unfamiliar with the school. When Qin Zhao brought Mara and Sindora to the newly built kindergarten, it was filled with parents and children. In fact, when the townspeople heard that Qin Zhao's 2 children were going to this kindergarten, they all wanted their children to go there too. The reason wasn't too complicated. It was just that Qin Zhao was rich. When Didi and the others were enrolled in the town's primary school, Qin Zhao had sponsored them quite a bit of money. He had improved the condition of the school and the teaching quality of the school. Of course, these parents hoped that their children would receive the same environment and education. Moreover, Qin Zhao was the bread and butter of half of the town's residents. Even from the perspective of worldly wisdom, they also hoped to get closer to Qin Zhao through the child. Some parents who were slightly familiar with Qin Zhao all greeted him. Many people looked familiar to Qin Zhao. Many of them opened various shops in the town. It was the only business in town. Therefore, Qin Zhao wasn't too unfamiliar with it. Qin Zhao maintained his smile. This was a typical social gathering. Qin Zhao didn't like this kind of social interaction. But in the end it was inevitable. Clive and Ampa were in charge of registering the children one by one. Of course, Sindora and Mara had already completed the registration. Including Mara and Sindora, there were a total of 20 children enrolled in the school. However, there were more than 50 children and parents who came for the interview. In fact, in Europe and the United States, high-end kindergartens all used an interview system. First, the child's intelligence level was assessed, followed by the parents' literacy and family background. Apart from a few special families, the board of directors would specially enroll them in order to create an image. For example, lesbian couples, gay couples, their children were usually adopted. Most of the time, as long as they reported their identity, most schools would enroll their children. Because if he rejected them he would face a lot of trouble. There was once a gay black couple who adopted a child. However, when they were going through the enrollment procedures for the child, they were rejected by the school. As a result, their neighbor exposed the incident to the media. As a result, the school, from the teachers to the board of directors, was severely criticized by the media. Discrimination against black people, gay people, and adoption were all sensitive topics in the United States. As long as one was in this society, no one could be exempted. Even Qin Zhao didn't dare to mention these topics easily. Of course, if there were really residents who wanted to send their children to kindergarten, Qin Zhao wouldn't have any objections. Other than those sensitive topics, most of the residents in the town knew each other well. Qin Zhao had already invested a lot in the kindergarten's facilities. Even the school bus was equipped with one. In fact, the town government provided a school bus and was willing to stop at the kindergarten. However, Qin Zhao still considered other issues, so he chose to pay for one himself. Then there were the kindergarten teachers. Other than Clive and Ampa, they'd also recruited 2 qualified teachers. The morning was basically for the children to get to know each other. At the same time, the children could get to know the teachers. After spending the morning with other children, Mara and Sindora were already running around with other children in the afternoon. In terms of children's education, foreign countries were indeed more advanced than China. The difference wasn't in terms of facilities or teachers, but mainly in terms of ideology. Especially in kindergarten, there was almost no cultural content. Most of them were intellectual development through fun and education. As for the current situation in China, they were already stuffed with knowledge from kindergarten onwards. Math and English were almost compulsory courses. Then there were all kinds of music and instrument lessons. Some parents even started signing their children up for extracurricular and hobby classes when they were 4 or 5 years old. Qin Zhao suspected that these extracurricular classes were probably the parents' own lack of childhood, so they wanted their children to make up for it. Of course, there were cram schools for children overseas too. Those who could afford it would hire private tutors, while those who couldn't would be sent to cram schools. However, most parents would wait until their children reached a certain age. Today was the start of kindergarten. The procedure was simple. School ended at 2 or 3 in the afternoon. It was rare for Qin Zhao to spend half a day with Sindora and Mara. On the way home, Qin Zhao didn't drive. Instead, he walked home with the 2 children. It was about 15 minutes away from Mirror Lake. It was less than 3 kilometers. Sindora and Mara ran in front. Occasionally they would run into the cornfield beside the road. This cornfield on the other side of Mirror Lake was also old. Not long ago, Qin Zhao had bought it from a resident of the town. This meant that Qin Zhao's private land covered 7.5 square kilometers. 1/4 of mountain town and half of the agricultural land were in Qin Zhao's hands. Just then Qin Zhao's phone rang. "Hey Zhang, what's up?" "Qin Zhao, it's almost New Year. I'm calling to wish you a Happy New Year." Qin Zhao was stunned. He'd almost forgotten. It was almost Chinese's traditional festival, Spring Festival. "How about it? Do you plan to go back for New Year?" "Forget it. It's not convenient for my family." "You're rich, so why would you be afraid?" Chapter 2588. "I'm not going back," Qin Zhao replied emotionlessly. "I've been busy lately. There wasn't anyone or anything worth worrying about in the country." "Bullshit," Zhang Tianyi said mercilessly. "You're not even in charge. Even if you want to find an excuse, find a better one. You know it's an excuse, but you're still nagging. Come back for New Year. You haven't been back in 2 or 3 years." Qin Zhao rubbed his forehead. 2 years and 4 months. Qin Zhao had gone abroad after National Day 2 years ago. "You're back in glory now. Come back and show off to your old classmates and teachers." "Do I look like a pain in the ass?" "I'm just trying to make you happy. How about you introduce a few female nuns? That'll make me happy. If I dare to give them to you, do you dare to take them? If you do, I'll give them to you." Qin Zhao and Zhang Tianyi fell into an endless argument over the same sentence. Sometimes, as the 2 strongest people in the world, their EQ and IQ would show huge flaws. Sometimes, as the 2 strongest people in the world, their EQ and IQ would show huge flaws. To put it simply, they were retarded. "Qin Zhao, don't you want to communicate with the spiritual world in the country?" "Communicate with what? With my current level, do I care about communicating with them?" Qin Zhao's words were rather arrogant. Nevertheless, he did have the right to say that. "I have some unique Taoist books and some books of other systems. Don't you want to see them?" "Where did you get them? You didn't steal them, did you?" A few hundred years ago, the struggle for orthodoxy was very cruel. Entire families were killed at every turn. It wasn't much different from the Dark Ages in Europe. Dragon Tiger Mountain can stand tall in this world. Do you think we've been obedient in the past few hundred years? That's why I don't dare to go. Maybe you've arranged some kind of trap for me. Then forget it. In any case, it's not convenient for ordinary people to read those precious books. If you're really sincere, you can send them over. What are you thinking? Taking these books out will cause old grudges. Dragon Tiger Mountain's Celestial Masters sect is powerful, but it's not to the extent that we can fight against the world. Many of the books collected by Dragon Tiger Mountain's Celestial Masters sect were related to old grudges. Perhaps everyone had forgotten about it. But if any of the books were to be missed out, that would remind everyone of some bad historical issues. Qin Zhao, I'm sincerely inviting you to be a guest at Dragon Tiger Mountain's Celestial Master Sect. I think you really need to come. Come, give me a reason why I must go. Don't you want to see this ancient book with your own eyes? There are many things in here that I don't understand, but perhaps you can. Don't joke around. You're an expert in Taoism, the boss of Taoism. I might not be able to understand what you understand, but I definitely won't be able to understand what you don't understand. Are you trying to overpraise me to death? No, I'm serious. Zhang Qianni said, after communicating with you the last time, I realized that the content recorded in records of ancient Yuan was far more profound than I understood. If we only relied on our communication, I'm afraid it would be very difficult to fully understand these things. You're different. You personally comprehended it, so you definitely have a better understanding of the things recorded in records of ancient Yuan than others. You're overestimating me. I've never overestimated you. I know you're unorthodox, but the difference between us isn't decided by Taoism or knowledge, Zhang Qianni said. You have your Taoism and I have mine. In terms of cultivation, you're one step ahead of others, so you don't have to belittle yourself. Qin Zhao sank into silence. Qin Zhao sank into silence. Zhang Qianni continued, for cultivators at our level, our individual combat power has almost reached the peak of humanity, so the strength of cultivation is not the most important thing. Right now, we're opening up a path for the future just like your daughters. Both of your daughters have extraordinary talent, but even though your cultivation is high now, you can't guide them. The further you go, the narrower your knowledge will be. You know how to cultivate yourself, but you don't know how to teach the younger generation. Moreover, the theory we've discussed isn't complete. I think we need to summarize it and compile it into a book. Okay, I'll think about it before replying. Soon, Qin Zhao returned home with Sindora and Mara. However, he was still considering whether to accept Zhang Tianni's invitation. It wasn't Zhang Tianni's first invitation. But in the past, Zhang Tianni hadn't been this sincere. Qin Zhao had basically just laughed it off. But this time, Zhang Tianni was strangely serious. Qin Zhao was a bit tempted. It was said that after one became successful, they would think about bringing good fortune to their descendants. Qin Zhao had the same thought. But his teaching skills were really just passable. If his ability could be counted among the top of humanity, if that was the case, then his teaching ability could be ranked at the bottom of the entire human race. Of course, there was also a deeper thought. It was the desire for knowledge. Qin Zhao also knew that he could only rely on himself now. But this path was really too difficult. No one could point him in the right direction. Hey Zhangting, it's me. Boss, what's up? It's New Year in a few days. Are you guys on holiday? No, it's on January 28th, Zhangting answered. No, give the company a holiday tomorrow. Also, everyone gets a big red packet for New Year. Zhangting was speechless. Her boss was trying to find an excuse to give the employees money again. This excuse was perfect and undeniable. Who could reject a red packet for New Year? She didn't want to be a sinner among the employees. Also, I plan to go back to China after New Year, Qin Zhao said. I'll have the employees come over for a gathering on the 15th. Okay. Zhangting was helpless. After all, her boss had given her so much face. She also didn't interfere with the company's matters. It was even easier than when she started her own business. At least, when she started her own business, she didn't have to worry about all sorts of things. Utilities, rent, employee salaries, business, and the market response of her work. But ever since Qin Zhao bought her studio and expanded to become an animation company, she didn't have to worry about any of this. She didn't have to worry about any of these problems. After all of these problems could be solved with money. If they could be solved with money, then they weren't problems at all. Qin Zhao was so poor that he only had money. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.